opportunity to summarize our budget presentation this morning and our municipal funding request. I'll present a brief introduction to our organization, and then Hassan, as the General Manager, will detail our 2016 budget. Conservation Halton watershed includes about 1,000 square kilometres of land drained by 17 creeks that flow into Lake Ontario. Halton region covers the largest portion of our watershed. The other communities in the watersheds besides include Mississauga and Pusland Township. Conservation Halton is provincially mandated watershed management agency and works in partnership with its local municipalities. With the municipal funding we receive, we are able to deliver the following core programs. We protect our watershed areas, manage water and forest resources, provide environmental education programs, and provide recreational opportunities at 7 conservation areas. As part of our watershed protection programs, Conservation Halton operates 4 dams and reservoirs and maintains flood and erosion channels in 3 major creek systems totaling almost 12 kilometres. A summary of our programs and services are detailed in our Public Accountability Report for 2015, which we provided copies today. I believe you have those. Through our resource management efforts, Conservation Halton is responsible for protecting more than 10,000 acres of environmentally significant lands. In 2015, Conservation Halton planted over 100,000 trees on public and private lands. 34 watershed projects were completed in 2015, along with long-term environmental monitoring to improve the overall watershed health, including habitat restoration, improve water quality, and reduced erosion. The environmental education programs we provide see over 67,000 school children and community group participants annually. As well, through our stewardship programs, we see more environmentally responsible private landowners. Conservation Halton provides outdoor recreation experiences to almost 900,000 people who visit our 7 conservation areas yearly. Our parks have seen significant growth in both visitation and revenues in the past 5 years. Just over 4% of our park pass holders are Hamilton residents. We have a system and we're tracking more and more users, and we'll be able to give you some pretty good information on who comes to our parks from Hamilton outside of the pass holders. Conservation Halton staff continue to work with the City of Hamilton staff on a number of initiatives that we believe will provide benefits to area residents and assist Hamilton achieve its environmental goals. We've listed some of the recent initiatives here, and with that, I'll let Hassan continue with the budget presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good morning, members of Council, Madam Chair. The City of Hamilton continues to receive a positive return on its investment in Conservation Halton. Conservation Halton received municipal funding from the City of Hamilton in 2015 of $183,000. Conservation Halton projects and services provided to Hamilton in the same year totaled $453,000, including conservation lands, capital and maintenance programs, tree planting, staff resources used in planning and permit applications in Hamilton, and the completion of the Mountsburg Dam capital work, which was required to meet provincial safety standards. The Conservation Halton 2016 budget totals just over $27 million. The operating budget of $24.9 million includes investments in new staff to meet increased service demands. The 2016 budget also provides for investment in our staff with the implementation of recommendations from a compensation review. The capital budget of $2.1 million will allow us to maintain our capital infrastructure to meet provincial standards, ensure public safety, and further the protection of environmentally significant lands. Our funding sources: user fees, chargebacks, and reserves, including revenues from our services and park fees, make up 62% or $16.6 million of our budget. Municipal funding represents 32% of our budget at $8.7 million for 2016. Provincial funding for programs such as flood forecasting and source water protection is 4% around $1 million for 2016. Municipal debt financing for capital projects is $400,000 or 2% of our budget. Other funding of $327,000 is 1% of the 2016 budget. This includes grants and funds raised by our own foundation. Total expenditures in the 2016 budget are $27 million. The largest is for staffing at 62% or $16.8 million. Other expenditure categories are roughly comparable with the percentages in 2015. A breakdown of these expenditures for 2016 by program is as follows. 42% is for conservation areas, including Glen Eden, 19% for watershed management and environmental services, 15% for the management and protection of our public assets, and 8% for capital projects. This is followed by corporate services, source water protection, partnership projects, and debt financing. Now, the major drivers for the increase in the 2016 municipal budget include new staff positions for $120,000, compensation review adjustments and benefit increases of $238,000, and debt financing charge increases of $77,000 for capital projects funded through debt financing provided by Halton Region. Hamilton's portion of the 2016 budget is $192,000. This is based on an apportionment of 2.2%, representing a 4.7% increase over 2015. The other municipal portions are noted here for comparison. The municipal funding we receive is allocated to programs shown here. The largest portion is for our Management and Protection of Public Assets program. This includes land and property management, forestry and water management services, staffing and maintenance. The total municipal funding required for 2016, capital and operating, is, as mentioned earlier, $8.7 million. This represents a 5% increase over 2015 municipal funding. It is important to note that the 2016 budget and our 10-year forecast do not include a number of projects that are currently unfunded, including managing emerald ash borer found in our forested properties while we investigate options and costs, capital development of the Glenorchy and Clapperson Woods areas, and the acquisition of environmentally significant lands. I'd like to thank you for giving us time to present our 2016 budget. I respectfully ask for your support of our 2016 budget and funding request. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that councillors may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Questions from committee? I had Councillor Whitehead.
Certainly appreciate all the good work that Halton Conservation does. I'm having a real challenge understanding the 5% increase, and I have read the book. I guess the concern I have is, there's been an outcry with police services having consistently over 3% increases, and they have some pretty challenging issues as well. In the last number of years, those budgets have dropped as a result of the pressures and understanding the people's ability to pay. So I guess my first question is, how does your increase compare to the other conservation authorities? Have you looked at where you stand in the middle of the pack, top of the pack, in regards to your ask?
Certainly. Through you, Madam Chair. One of the big drivers of our increase in the 5% for this year are related to our compensation review. And the reason you're seeing that increase is because we fell behind in adjusting our salaries. The last time we did this was in 1999. And so when we went to market this year and we compared ourselves to the Hamilton Conservation Authority, 4 other conservation authorities, as well as some of our municipal partners, these were the results that came back. Now, in spite of those results, 60% of our staff, when we implemented the new compensation banding, were below step 1. And 40%, I believe, still are paid below step 1. So we had to introduce categories A and B below steps 1 to 5 to accommodate that. So there is a little bit of that we allowed ourselves to fall behind when we should have been doing these adjustments periodically. The other comment I'll make, Councillor, is we're aware of the financial pressures that all municipalities are under. We're aware of the 1% guideline we were given. We respect that. Most of our work occurs in Halton region, which is undergoing tremendous growth. And I, again, appreciate that the City of Hamilton is not experiencing that type of growth. What I can say is that moving forward, we're looking to focus in on some of our core services and programs. We're going to be making some changes. We're going to balance our budget between operating and capital and staffing and other priorities. And we're going to make it a little more sustainable moving forward. We realize that we cannot keep coming in at 5% increases.
So I just want to correct something. We've broken records in the last 5 years and outperforming most of the communities around us in regards to growth. We've had over $1 billion, $1.2 billion, $1.4 billion in building permits assessed value in this community. So that growth is exploding in the City of Hamilton as well. And yet the other adjacent conservation authorities who impact us probably to a greater degree because of the boundary are experiencing that same growth. So the growth is, to me, is a wash. I think the concern is that you're an outside board, you're an outside agency, and I know that you, in good faith, you do the best you can. I appreciate that. I want to put that right on the record. But the taxpayer isn't an endless pool of money. And when I see 5% increases, which is completely out of line with not only our targets, but what is actually happening with the economy and what's happening around us, it makes it really challenging and, in fact, impalpable to look at a 5% increase and say, like, this, we're going back to like the 60s or the 70s, where, you know, there was a lot more wealth. We don't have that same level of wealth right now. So I appreciate you're coming in good faith. You believe that you've done everything you can for the 5%, but I can tell you that it's not acceptable to me, and I'll be listening to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions to the presenters around the table? Seeing none. I'm sorry. Councillor Green, apologies. I didn't hear.
No, that's okay. I
Thank
didn't
you.
ding in. I couldn't get to my pen fast enough. Just through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, I can appreciate 5% is I can appreciate 5% is not 22%. However, I think the ask is that we're asking agencies to come in at 1%. So given the tough financial constraints that we're under, I'm happy to toe that line.
Thank you, Councillor Robert Pasuta.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome. And it's here and it's zero, but Glen Eden itself, it's self-financing. Can you kind of explain the Glen Eden Ski Hill and how that works down there through, Madam Chair?
Absolutely. Not only Glen Eden, but all of our parks operations related to recreation, they are self-financing, so we're not using taxpayer dollars to operate Glen Eden. Glen Eden does generate significant revenues, which enable us to invest back not just in infrastructure at the parks, because that's being stretched to its limits with the growth, but it actually ends up subsidizing a lot of operations in central services within the organization that then assist us in offering programs that are taxpayer supported.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers to the presenters, can I have a motion to receive? Moved by Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor Pasuta. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
On now. Again, Stephanie, do we need to stay within timelines here? Sorry.
Don't have to wait.
We don't have to. We can
No, those
continue.
were
Thank you.
approximate times.
They're here. Yes. Councillor Whitehead.
I met a delegation is going to be making a presentation this morning out in the parking lot. They made every effort to pay for the parking ticket to put in their windshield. The machine wouldn't take cash or credit or anything. I advise them just put a note in their windows.
Okay.
But for public record, I want to make sure that they're not impacted by a ticket because they made every effort to pay. And I was there. Upper level.
They can't park in the upper level.
Well, then we should provide that instruction then.
There's a sign.
Okay, so for
is
that
a sign.
delegation, you're supposed to be parking downstairs.
There is a sign through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, that says you can't park there until after 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday unless you're a permit holder.
Okay, but thank you. We're going to go on to item 5.2 is the Grand River Conservation Authority. Representatives are here. If you'd like to step down, I'm going to call Joe Farwell, CAO, Halton Jowett, newly appointed chair of the board, to provide the presentation for Grand River Conservation Authority.
Lighting up.
So we're ready?
I wonder if they'll let me take that out. I don't want to fit that
I would leave it in, Kate.
out. Doesn't load it again.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you today. My name is Helen Jowett. I'm a regional councillor of Waterloo, representing Cambridge, and newly elected GRCA chair, and I'm very much looking forward to my new role. And I'm happy to introduce my colleagues here today, Joe Farwell, CAO, Grand River Conservation Authority, and Keith Murch, who is the Assistant CAO and Secretary Treasurer. So thank you very much for, again, allowing us the opportunity to speak to you today. And
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to Council for the opportunity to give you a quick overview of our budget. I'll just do a little reminder of the Grand River Conservation Authority and our role in the watershed. The Grand is the largest watershed in southwestern Ontario. It runs 300 kilometers from Dundalk to Lake Erie, and the major tributaries are the Conestoga, Speed, Eramosa, and Nith. The main parts that drain the city of Hamilton are Big Creek and Fairchild Creek. The population in the Grand is about 1 million people, and it is still a very rich agricultural region. There are 50 municipal and Six Nations drinking water systems that serve 80% of our residents. In addition, there's several wastewater treatment plants throughout the Grand. Our organization is broken down. We have a board of directors. George Stojanovic is the member from the city of Hamilton. I report to that board, and we're broken into 4 specific divisions. And the roles of the divisions, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but it's in your presentation. We have an admin division, operations, which is where we deliver our planning and services to the public generally. Resource management. Again, that's our permitting side, and our engineering division is where we do our dam management and flood control programs. Our strategic plan has a number of objectives, and the principal ones are really to protect life and minimize property damage. We do share a lot of information with our neighboring conservation authorities around our weather radar. Storms through Hamilton area track east to west, and radar picks it up, and we're able to issue flood warnings using our predictions on the weather. You have a special challenge here in Hamilton with lake breeze events. Those are those big storms that come off of Lake Ontario, and I know that the city has been subjected to some serious flooding over the last couple of years. We do continue to work in sharing snow data. We actually collect through an American service called NOAA, daily snow cover, and we use that to determine how to fill our reservoirs and when we should be issuing flood warnings in the springtime. We do work with senior levels of government to find innovative ways to provide floodplain mapping. We just completed a very detailed flood management study over the entire watershed and mapped all of the streams. There's about 11,000 kilometers of water courses in the streams, and you can see the portion in the city of Hamilton. I'll point them out. You can see them on the screen. There's a very dense drainage network in Hamilton, again, Fairchild and Big Creek. And it runs off into the Grand and into Lake Erie. So certainly phosphorus and nitrogen and things on the landscape have a way to work down through the Grand. We continue to assess new technologies and apply them wherever we can, sort of as a cost-saving measure. I can recall the days when floodplain mapping was much more manual and intense. Now we're able to use digital elevation models, and that allows us to improve our flood forecasting and warning system and make some adaptations to deal with coming climate change. Right now, in terms of improving watershed health, we are starting a sub-watershed plan for Fairchild Creek. About 40% of that sub-watershed is actually in the city of Hamilton, and it's certainly one of the highest sediment and phosphorus loads within the Grand. Again, the sub-watershed planning is really geared toward reducing rural and urban non-point source pollution. We're writing the characterization report now, and it's certainly listed as one of the high priority areas within the Grand River water management plan. I'm just going to move this screen a little bit so I can see it a little better. Again, within our strategic priority of improving watershed health, the Rural Water Quality Program is an important program. In 2015 in Hamilton, there were 6 projects completed. It's not as extensive as some of our other parts of the watershed, but over the life of the program, there have been 82 projects and a number of grants provided to local landowners. And in this case, we don't actually seek the capital money for those grants from the municipality. They're from senior levels of government. So wherever we're able, we get money from the federal and provincial government and try to pass it through to the landowners through grants for water quality improvements that they make. And I really want to highlight that when they receive grants as landowners, they make a major financial contribution as well. The grants are proportional to the kind of work that they're doing. So over the life of the project, there's really been 6 erosion control projects. We've fenced out 4 kilometers of streams, retired a little bit of agricultural land, and decommissioned a number of wells. Overall, within the entire watershed, there's been a long history of rural water quality program, and there has been about $42 million invested in water quality improvements throughout the entire Grand. So the whole watershed community is working to improve the health of the watershed. A project that was very, very exciting and relevant for this area was the Ontario Geological Survey project that was carried out and did geologic mapping throughout the province of Ontario. And specifically here, we mapped the Dundas Buried Valley through the city of Hamilton. That project was completed in 2012, and it's important to understand the opportunities for groundwater and wells within the region. And certainly the groundwater is a major contributor to the north end of, or the east end of Lake Erie, and it flows down through Cootes Paradise. So. Change. Some of the planning activities that we're undergoing right now is we're working to try and work with the province and the watershed municipalities to sort out the large fill problem with fill exported from the GTA and placed out in the countryside. We would really like to see tightened rules to give municipalities and conservation authorities more ability to actually deal with some of these large fill placement problems. So we continue to work with the province and with your staff to try to address that problem. We do have memoranda of understanding with the city for planning. We provide comments on planning matters under natural heritage programming. It's an opportunity for us to work with your staff and provide comments, and it requires a lot of technical input and technical experts, and we have them on staff, so we're able to achieve that on your behalf. Certainly another strategic priority at the Grand is connecting people with the environment. We have outdoor education nature centers. We run a number of kids through our school programs, and we do have outdoor recreation opportunities that are available to the residents of Hamilton within a 30-minute drive at a number of our major parks. This is just a sample of some of the land holdings within the city. You can see there's a number of prominent features like the rail trail and the parks within a 30-minute drive. In 2015, we did complete our source protection plan. Some of the other highlights, we did have a record-breaking year within our parks for revenue. Our parks are highly dependent on weather. Last year, everything came together and we were able to achieve a real strong financial year. The Rural Water Quality Program, we were able to receive provincial funding for a Great Lakes Agricultural Stewardship Grant, and that allows us to reach out to farmers to work to improve best management practices throughout the watershed. And that program will be applied across the watershed in the rural communities. We did achieve some Canada 150 funding toward the just at the time of the federal election call, and we'll use that to carry out some capital improvements on our lands. Some of the priorities going forward, there is a review of the Conservation Authorities Act underway. We're participating in that review. It talks about governance, finance. Oh, I'm sorry. The Conservation Authorities Act review talks about governance, finance, and the roles and responsibilities of conservation authorities, and we're certainly requesting that the province come back to the table and start to provide more and more some of the traditional funding that we did. We are working at expanding winter programming as a revenue source. We're working on watershed-wide flood vulnerable area mapping, again, part of our digital mapping program. We continue to collaborate to try and address the illegal fill options. Climate change is going to be a continuing concern at conservation authorities we're all trying to address, and we have a particular concern with emerald ash borer. It's moving through our watershed, and there is a real public safety risk with some of those weak trees. Now I'm going to turn it over to Keith to give you an overview of the budget and the timeline. So the button on the right gets the advancement.
Morning. I'll just walk through a couple of very brief slides, and we'd be pleased to answer any questions about the 2016 budget. Each year we start in the summer, in July or August, with a 5-year forecast, present that to our general membership, and the first year of that sort of sets the stage for the next budget. Between October and December, we generally work with the municipal staff to communicate what the budget is going to look like, and therefore we can help them understand what levy they might include in their budgets. On September 25th this year, we presented the first draft of our budget to our general membership, and between then and now we've been presenting to municipal councils in the watershed. On Friday, just this past Friday, we presented the second draft to the general membership, and as required under the Conservation Authorities Act, we got the direction of our board to go ahead and forward this draft to all of the municipalities in the watershed with the 30-day notice of the budget vote. And that vote is where our general membership decides on the budget and the general levy. That'll take place on February 26th this year. So the 30-day notice it just went out late yesterday, and a complete copy of the draft budget was attached. So that would have been sent to the clerk here at the City of Hamilton. Just some highlights of what is included in that budget. This screen keeps dropping. It's a $30.9 million budget in 2016. About 35% of the funding for that comes from the municipal levy. $10.8 million is coming from municipal levy, 11% from government grants, and we self-generate about 46% of our revenues. If you look on the expenditure side, you'll see that about 78% of our spending, so the majority of our spending, is just for the base operating programs to continue to deliver the ongoing services and programs that Joe just spoke about. We do have some special projects and, of course, the capital budget as well. I'll just go to the next slide, which actually it'll be the third one that gives you a little bit more information about those special projects and so on. The revenue categories haven't really changed in percentage terms, like relative size or year over year. The general municipal levy is increasing by 2.5% in the draft budget to $10,809,000. Most of that, $9.8 million, is our operating levy, and $1 million goes towards capital projects, most of which is matched 50-50 by capital grants. We also have a large, or about a $4 million share of that budget under the category we call special projects, and those are offset completely by special one-time funding. And that category of our budget goes up and down year over year. We don't put any levy towards the special projects. They're either funded by foundation donations through our Grand River Conservation Foundation or special grants or other sources. Just to sort of see the summary numbers of those categories, the operating budget, which I said earlier was about 78% of our budget, that's $24.2 million next year, and that's increasing year over year by about 2.6%. The capital budget is up by 4.8%. The major contributor in that increasing is, as Joe just said, we were successful in getting some Canada 150 grants, and we're scheduling those projects this year, and they've been funded by the grants. So that's why the capital levy to the municipalities has not changed at all. It's a 0% increase year over year. The special programs down below, quite a bit higher, 17.5%, but all of that $4 million is coming from one-time grants for special things, such as the source protection program, things like that. The source of the funding down below, I've already covered that in the pie chart. About 35% of it is the municipal levy. Other municipal funding, that $980,000, that is those municipalities that contribute to our rural water quality program. Those are grants that we give directly to farmers. That's mainly in the region of Waterloo and Guelph and Wellington County, where the money is spent. Other government grants, $3.4 million. That's all of our M&R grants for operating and capital, and numerous other grants we're receiving in 2016. And that category's been increasing. We've been fortunate in being approved for a number of applications over the last few years. Self-generated revenue, I should say, $14.2 million. About half of that comes from our conservation area user fees. The rest comes from things like the school programs in the nature centers. We have a large rental program. We rent over 700 cottage lots on the Conestoga and Bellwood Lakes, and some other agricultural and other rentals. And then we're bringing $1.4 million in from reserves this year. That's mostly to do with timing. Some of the capital projects, we've set money aside for completion in future years. So there's the $30 million in revenue, where it's coming from. The bottom line in terms of levy is a 2.5% increase to $10,809,000, as I said earlier. And when we use the special formula that has been in place for many years with the local agreement with the City of Hamilton, we're continuing to follow that, which means that the City of Hamilton pays about 2.4% of our levy. So the actual dollars raised from the City of Hamilton's levy in 2016 will be $256,000, which is a 2.1% increase from your share last year. And that's the last slide I have, so we'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I have a speakers list: Councillor Whitehead, Councillor Jackson, and Councillor Partridge. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. So I've been just looking at the historic ask by the Grand River, and you're being pretty consistent, around 2.5 for the last several years, which I appreciate. I mean, I still think it's. If you take a look at where in Hamilton, we're starting with a 2.1. That's our starting point this year. And that's because we're doing everything we can to be efficient and drive the cost to our taxpayers down and provide a quality service. And I guess I'm struggling and trying to understand if the city of over $1 billion budget can manifest that. And of course, these are directions we're giving to our staff in regards to driving those costs down. Then we get boards and agencies. I mean, we just did with Halton, and I just did a quick cursor look at Halton, and I mean, if you took an average, you're around 7% for the last 7 years. 7%. I mean, that's not even sustainable in regards to any community. If we came at 7% every year in city taxes, well, we wouldn't be sitting here. I can tell you that. So that's the difference. We're accountable. Unfortunately, in the Conservation Authority, you have a mix, and I don't think it translates to the same level of accountability as city councils have. So again, I'm going to echo the fact that you do great work, and I know that this is all in good faith. So I want to make that clear. The question is, I don't know if you're doing 5-year budget strategies and and looking at trying to drive those unforeseeable costs down, or even the foreseeable costs down. So the first question I'm going to ask is, there is a formula in the percentage of what City of Hamilton contributes relative to the, I guess, the land mass or the boundary with the Grand River. Is that correct?
Didn't quite hear that question about the formula for the levy apportionment. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, it's based on how much, I guess, of your scope or area boundaries or falls into the City of Hamilton.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we were here last year, we spent some time talking about the levy formula that we use, and we explained that about 15 years ago, when the city amalgamated, we went from having a couple of townships and part of Ancaster in our watershed to having, by geographic size, 20% of the City of Hamilton in our watershed, somewhere around 20%. And we said, well, we certainly don't have 20% of the city's assessment in our watershed, because the geographic area in our watershed is largely rural. So I think the Niagara and the Halton saw the same thing happening with the levy formula. And we met the four authorities in the city at that time, and we developed a formula, which we wrote to the Ministry of Natural Resources and asked for permission to enter into a local agreement, and we did that over a period of 2 years. I know there's some question as to how that needs to be supported by all of the other watershed municipalities. Niagara has raised that question. But what we did is we geo-referenced every property that was in our watershed from the City of Hamilton, and we added up that assessment as a percentage of our total, and we saw that about 4.7% of our watershed assessment is related to actual properties in the City of Hamilton. So we allocated 4.7% of the, 4.7% of our assessment equates to 2.4% of the total assessment in the watershed.
I appreciate it. I think the issue for the City of Hamilton, when we worked with the province of Ontario and they allowed those agreements to be entered into, is because communities shouldn't be punished when there's a forced amalgamation upon them. And if there's a pre-existing formula with the former communities, it's not a windfall, because now you get the whole City of Hamilton assessment to contribute to something when, in fact, historically that was not the case. And the amalgamation was forced, and it wasn't about, okay, now you got a greater assessment, you can throw more money towards the conservation authorities. So certainly that's our position. I mean, we weren't supposed to be punished as a result of the forced amalgamation. We were told we were going to be punished. And secondly, the reason why they allowed, enabled, enacted the legislation to get into these agreements is to recognize that these were forced amalgamations, and it wasn't about creating a windfall for example, conservation authorities. So I appreciate the tone that you entered into. But the reason I asked that question is the Grand River. How many of the communities on the Grand River are using it as a water source and dumping their wastewater into the and stormwater into the Grand River system?
Through you, Madam Chair, there are 30 wastewater treatment plants within the watershed that discharge to the Grand, and there are approximately 50, we have the numbers in our presentation here, you can pull them right up, that use the water as a water source. There are actually two groups that take water directly from the river, the City of Brantford and the regional municipality of Waterloo, and then Six Nations takes water from the river. So.
The reason I'm asking that question is because I would, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that when you have that level of activity by communities on the very system that you're stewarding, I got to think that there's a greater level of one, activity, and two, and a greater amount of work and impact on the watershed as a result of that direct relationship with the Grand River. The City of Hamilton doesn't have that relationship. I'm trying to understand, when you weight this current formula, how is that piece considered?
Okay, I can respond to that, Madam Chair. That formula is really just based on current value assessment, the weighting of the formula. The way that the municipalities like the region of Waterloo and the city of Guelph and Brantford have done it is they've, sorry?
On slide 2.
Oh, okay. They contribute directly to the rural water quality program through an optional levy, I would say. So they provide that $900,000 roughly of funding for that goes back out to the farm community for the rural water quality program, and that's something they've chosen to do to do stewardship work within their municipalities.
Okay, but it doesn't negate the fact that when I weight impacts on the watershed system, current assessment process in this case doesn't appear to be fair or equitable, because you have a number of communities that directly draw water from that watershed, directly put wastewater back and stormwater back into that watershed, obviously impacting that watershed to a greater degree. The formula is equated to the assessment piece and doesn't account for the weight of the impact on that watershed system. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, sure, that's a good point. We have some municipalities that are on wells and septics and aren't using the municipal services at all, yet the assessment is still used for the distribution of levy, while others are totally on municipal systems. That's a provincial formula, and there are a number of problems with that formula, including this issue of geographic area that we just spoke of, and also including what you just described. But we're bound to use the provincial distribution formula, and if all the authorities use it, then 100% of the assessment is distributed among all the authorities.
I want to make it clear. I understand that this is the cards that you've been given, and you have to operate within those parameters. But I want to highlight that there is a recognition that there needs to be a lot of improvement in assessment and weighting on these processes, so the appropriate communities that mostly impact that watershed system are paying proportionally to the impact they have on those systems. Right? To the chair.
Through you, Madam Chair. No, we agree with that. It should be a fair distribution, and we'll bring that back to Conservation Ontario with our discussions with the province on the review of the Conservation Authorities Act. Again, funding is one of the things that they are actually reviewing under the Conservation Authorities Act. So we're hearing that message loud and clear.
I appreciate that. And again, I know that it's tough. You were abandoned a number of years ago by the province of Ontario in regards to the funding that was available to you then and relative to what is available to today. So again, it's another issue of, in my opinion, and I think Councillor Merla beats this drum pretty hard, is the level of downloading indirectly to municipalities by not funding conservation authorities appropriately, and I want to highlight that as well. At 2.5, again, we're starting at 2.1. There's a reason for moving in that direction. And we would hope that our boards and agencies would be getting the message and trying to deliver something within the target or the objective that we set out. I understand that's not always achievable, but it's something for us to continue pressing the boards and agencies to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. Joe, Keith, good to see you again. Can you just go back to slide 2? Is it possible, please, Joe or Keith? Just to go back to slide 2, and just so that I just have a couple more questions for my edification in terms of the additional work it seems like that Grand River is taking on. Thank you very much. Thanks, Stephanie, for your assistance as well. So, Joe, just educate me further. The 50 municipalities, is that like your Waterfords, your Dunvilles, your Simcoes? Just further elaborate on the type of towns and that you're servicing, Madam Deputy Mayor, through you.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, it won't be the Simcoes and Waterfords. They're outside of our watershed, but it'll be the towns like Guelph and St. George, places like that. They will have drinking water systems. Municipalities, people have two choices. They'll be on municipal well or their own wells, but the majority of the watershed of the Grand is on municipal supply.
So the Halton and Norfolk area as well, or again, it's mostly the Kitchener, Waterloos, and the Brantfords? Madam Deputy Mayor, through you.
Halton and Norfolk will have their water supplies as well. They'll be on municipal water supply, places like Caledonia, things.
Okay, very good. And 20% you're covering of Hamilton as it's growing. Just give me a rough layman's delineation. Is it like to the Copetown, Ancaster, Bimbrook, Mount Hope, some South Mountain, Carluke, that area? Or can you give me some kind of layman's delineation, Joe?
I can probably...
Please?
Is there a laser pointer on here? I can sketch out the location of the boundary fairly clearly. The red one? So the City of Hamilton boundary runs approximately up through here, down through, and connects up on the side of Guelph. And the actual towns that are in Hamilton, we'll have on one of the maps here.
Flamborough, part of Ancaster, and Glanbrook are the only ones.
You just, at the microphone, please, Keith, sorry.
Before the amalgamation,
Yes.
I remember the levy that we accounted for the city, or for what was then the region of Hamilton, was Flamborough,
Yep.
Glanbrook, and Ancaster. And it wasn't 100% of those, I don't believe. I don't remember the percentage. So places like Binbrook are not in our watershed.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Your slide 5, please, Keith. It say here that the GRCA helps more other CAs on flood forecasting and warning as well. Can you elaborate on that for me, Joe, please? How exactly you alert the HCA that covers all of Hamilton, our main one, how you help them with the mapping and alerts of the possible rivers, creeks that might be bulging and ready to, cause some flood problems? Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor?
Certainly, through you, Deputy Mayor. We actually share our data wherever possible. When we issue flood warnings, they go out to all of the conservation authorities, and so they know something's coming through our watershed. We're not able to predict things like lake breeze effect off Lake Ontario. Those are some of the big storms that they come up very suddenly. Again, we see them in our watershed as well. They tend to happen on the west side of our watershed from Lake Huron, Lake Breeze, but we do share data wherever possible. There is a provincial flood forecasting and warning committee that the conservation authorities generally participate in, and we share information. We've developed a common terminology around all the conservation authorities, so a flood warning and a flood watch mean the same thing to everyone. So we do try to work with the adjacent CAs as much as we can.
Excellent, Joe. Last question, Madam Deputy Mayor. Slide 17, please. Keith, your GRCA strategic priorities, large fill operations. So I read that, and I'm curious, Joe, if you've got repeat offenders that are causing illegal dumping, and what us, in collaboration with you, what the ministry, what are we doing about this? Because it sounds like it's an ongoing problem. Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. We don't have typically repeat offenders. We have gone through court cases and taken people to court and been successful on having fill removal. We don't have stop work legislation the way municipalities sometimes can. So we're kind of caught between when our regulation applies, it's a challenge because the municipal soil bylaws or soil placement bylaws don't apply in the same place. So it's very difficult legislation, and there's a bit of a loop. I would almost call it a loophole. And so we're working with the province to try to get one of us some clear authority to actually deal with large fill placement, the municipalities or the Conservation Authority. And,
I'm always disturbed and disgusted by illegal dumping anywhere, and especially in the conservation area. So there's no appeal or cooperation with the municipalities that are affected. Joe, if you're saying it's like a technicality and it's semantics and you don't technically have the authority to go after the illegal dumpers, but municipalities do, but they can't kind of go on your land that you govern and oversee. So, Madam Deputy Mayor, through to Joe, just for maybe a little clarification on how we can all help with this serious problem.
Madam Deputy Mayor, we can all help by really getting to the province and pushing them to develop really strong laws and legislation that will help us. Whenever we've pursued a legal action on fill, it's been very expensive, it's been very long term, and you know, although we receive convictions, the damage is still done, and it becomes a problem.
Do you get monetary compensation on the successful convictions, Madam Deputy Mayor?
None whatsoever.
Thanks.
That
really does.
We don't think it's any more fair than you do.
All right. Maybe there's some way, Madam Deputy Mayor, after hearing from all the conservation authorities, that might be some possible motion that we can work together and appeal to the province in terms of greater enforcement and fines and deterrence, Madam Deputy Mayor. Through to Joe for a closing comment.
We would most certainly appreciate that.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Keith, Joe, thank you for coming in today. Good presentation. I have two questions, and I really appreciate the questions and comments by the previous speaker, because I also agree with that. I think that's something that would be beneficial if we could come together and do a motion to support you folks when it comes to the financial costs for legal proceedings. I have two questions, one on the Conservation Authority Act review, and the next one is on the emerald ash borer. Most of the questions I had have been answered on the review, but could you just clarify for me, is the process of the review to review the Conservation Act province-wide as well as the individual agreements, or just the agreements with the municipality of Hamilton, if you could please?
To you, Madam Deputy Mayor, it's actually province-wide review of the Conservation Authorities Act, and has no specific review of the agreements with municipalities. One of the things we'd like to see out of the review is some clarity around the current value assessment and the way that costs are passed on to municipalities.
Okay, terrific. And so through you, Madam Chair, and that is, and if I understand, it's our MP Eleanor McMahon that is heading up this review?
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay, from the Burlington area, and I know she will do a good job, as she always does. Moving on to the emerald ash borer, do you have a specific program that is funded? And if you could just elaborate for me, through you, Madam Chair, on what that program is.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's a risk-based program where we look at the risk of various trees. We're working on removing trees from areas that are active, so where there's people, through our conservation areas, through our cottage lot program. That's where we focused our initial effort. Our longer-term plan will be to remove some of the medium risk trees. We know that some of the lower risk trees in isolated areas are just going to fall on their own. And our goal is really to protect the public through the emerald ash borer. And then the longer term goal will be to actually replenish some of the forests that are devastated by the emerald ash borer with other more diverse species.
Okay, thank you. But through Madam Chair, so you're not treating the trees at all. It's strictly take down what you can, save what you can. But how are you saving them? Is it just, if you could just elaborate on that?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have a program where we do inject a handful of trees, but in terms of the overall scale of the number of ash trees in the Grand, it's really a minuscule number, and it's more of a trial to see if it's working. These would be the high value trees in campgrounds and places like that. But make no mistake about it, if they become a risk to the public, they will come down. And so our treatment program, we don't expect to have a huge impact. It'll possibly save some trees, but overall we expect to take a lot down.
Right, thank you. And I think we're experiencing a similar situation here in the municipality. And where I'm going with this line of questioning, Madam Chair, is, you know, this beetle is only going to continue to ravage the municipalities, and we're certainly experiencing that here in the city, particularly in Stony Creek. But do you see a requirement for more funding in the years going forward? Is this going to get worse? Do you think it's stabilizing? What are your thoughts on that?
No funding.
Well, I can respond to that, Madam Chair. We have put in requests to the province for funding support, and they've written back and confirmed there is not a provincial funding program for Emerald Ash Borer. We are working away at it. We do have reserves that we can seek permission from the province to use to cover a portion of the costs. And again, we budget each year to take out a certain number of trees, and we use our reserves and our normal forestry hazard tree program to actually deal with the problem right now.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Basuda.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor Pearson, and welcome both Keith and Joe, and particularly Councillor Jowett. Helen, welcome. And you had your election on Friday, and you have the chair. Your vice chair is Mayor Chris White, the mayor of Guelph-Aramasa. I sit with him on the Roma board. A very animated man, and I think you're going to be very lucky to have him as the vice chair, but he's quite animated and very knowledgeable, so congratulations to both of you. I must say that I see a large amount of permits coming through Drew Cherry. A large portion of my ward, Ward 14, is covered by Grand River. Seems to be an enormous amount of work that Cherry and his staff are doing as far as permits, culverts, barns for building, houses, all of that. I think more than I've seen from any other conservation authorities in my ward. So it's good work on that, and you're out there, and you just in Hamilton alone, so I can just imagine the massive amount of work that your staff is doing in all your regulated area of your Grand River Conservation Authority. Any idea how many permits are issued per year by your authority?
Yep, through you, Madam Chair, there's about 600 permits per year across the watershed. And our goal is typically to try and work with landowners to come up with solutions for that fit within our approved policies. So we try to have a real presence out in the watershed and work with landowners so that we're not having to continuously have hearings and turn down permits.
And Madam Deputy Mayor, one of the things brought by Councillor Jackson was the fill, and we've been working, Hamilton, myself, along with Joe and other staff, have been working Halton Conservation on the fill issues. You have your own permitting procedures and we have ours. It'd be nice to bring them all together, but I do know from all of our talks and my talks with Minister McMeekin that the province is putting something together. It's time that the province stepped forward. We did our own thing, Madam Deputy Mayor, and we did the pesticide, and knowing full well that something was coming from the province. And eventually we had ours, but the province stepped forward and come up with a good program. So we need to do something, and it's out there, and it happens. There's illegal fill dumping, but we're doing the best we can in this situation. Through Madam Deputy Mayor, do you have farm programs? What kind of programs do you have for farmers to enhance the watershed, to protect it? Elaborate on that a little bit today, if you get.
Certainly through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. We do actually have the Rural Water Quality Program. It doesn't cover the entire watershed. We would deliver it across the watershed if there's capital funding available, but it's primarily focused in Brant, the region of Waterloo, and Guelph, Wellington. And Keith's going to pull up a slide. Actually, if you go to the next one with the map, Keith.
Sorry, 12?
It has the map on it. That's the one. And you can see the red dots each represent a project that's been carried out over the 1998 to 2015 period. And you can see that a number of them are focused in and around the upper left part of the watershed. That's Wellesley Township, where there's a lot of farmland. And the province, we seek provincial and federal funding wherever we're able, but the majority of the capital funding for this program comes through the municipalities. So the Waterloo region allocates $250,000 a year to the Rural Water Quality Program and has since 1998 to carry out projects on farmlands. Our job as a conservation authority is to keep the expert staff on staff to actually go out and meet with farmers and come up with best solutions for their farms. The City of Guelph and Brantford came into the program a little bit later, so the intensity of the dots around their watershed isn't quite as high. For places like Halton and Hamilton, we seek provincial and federal funding wherever we're able and reach out to the farm community there. The recent grant we received from the province, and it's called the Great Lakes Advisory Stewardship Initiative, Agricultural Stewardship Initiative, is to reach out across the watershed. It all drains to Lake Erie, the whole grant, and we'll be working with farmers for best management practices, but it's more working with them for practices rather than providing capital funding. So just really to promote best practices and educational forums and things like that.
And Madam Deputy Mayor, just one more comment. So, and maybe a comment here, question maybe. So, Joe, over the last 10 years, I know as a farmer and profession, we've been doing more and more minimum till, no till. And I've seen that across all of the province, and particularly into the Hamilton as we get into the Guelph through that area down there. Are you noticing that too? Your staff noticing that as you're working with the farm?
Through you, Madam Mayor, certainly the farm community's really adopted best practices really well, and there is more no-till, there's more buffers along streams, there's more tree planting going on. I'm really encouraged by where the farm community's going with their stewardship practices.
Great to see you working with the rural farm community. Thank you, Joe.
Deputy Mayor, may I actually introduce George Stojanovic as well? He's the member for the City of Hamilton, and he arrived well before 10:15, but we did get a bit of an early start. So,
Thank you. Appreciate that and welcome. Councillor Whitehead, another question, second time?
Something I should ask consistently with all the boards and agencies. So you provide permits and comments and so forth on development or whatever applications. Is that a cost recovery program for the Conservation Authority?
The revenue from our permits, it equates to about 50% of the cost of delivering the service. So it's not complete cost recovery. It covers about half.
So I guess the next obvious question is, we are going to a cost recovery model, user pay, for the services that are needed on those types of applications. Why are you only charging 50% of what you could charge for those services?
it's a question I want to bring back to our board through the strategic planning. We want to actually make sure that the costs don't get out of hand for the landowner to the point that they're not applying for permits, and we have to start enforcing more. Enforcing is certainly more expensive. We do want to bring that question back to our board, though, through a strategic planning discussion, whether we should be pushing forward with higher fees for permitting.
Okay, but I mean, obviously, and I appreciate that, when you come in at 2.5 and others come in at high levels, I mean, we are now looking at that particular model that if you're using that service, the taxpayer shouldn't be subsidizing it, right? I mean, you're benefiting from the permit that's being released and being reviewed. So I'm not exactly sure, I guess you're concerned about sort of a black market approach that we'll just do it anyway without applying for the permit. But that's an enforcing issue, and 50% subsidy for permits this day and age, something I would ask you to review. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions from committee, thank you for the presentations, gentlemen, and Helen, certainly. And may I have a motion to receive the presentation here this morning? Councillor Jackson, Councillor Whitehead, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Councillor Jackson,
Madam
did you want
Deputy
me to
Mayor,
come back for your motion?
I'm working on a draft motion. If you come back to me before this day over, please.
I will do that, sir. No problem. Thank you very much. Stephanie, I know we have Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit next. I think they're out in the atrium. I'm not sure if we can just signal to them. Yes, you have to open the door.
as far as the video.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council, senior staff. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Charlie Witherington. I'm the chief of the Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit. I've been designated as a spokesperson today to do today's presentation, and also with me today up in the bleachers up there is our Deputy Chief Ed Nolan and Acting Lieutenant Kevin Slowinski. In this year's correspondence, we asked to, no. In this year's correspondence, we received we were asked to submit a request for 2016 with the ability to increase our funding request by 1%. However, we submitted the request at a 0% increase for this year. Over the years, the rescue unit has responded to many emergencies and are normally deployed or activated by Hamilton Police Marine Unit, Fire Department, EMS, or the Canadian Coast Guard from Trenton. The lift bridge has also been able to recognize emergencies and have contacted us directly. In 2015, through our fundraising efforts and assistance from the City of Hamilton capital funding, we were able to replace our aging 22-foot limestone vessel with a new 25-foot Stanley twin 150 horsepower engines. Updated navigational electronics, and the value of that was just over $140,000, of which over $80,000 of the money was raised within our fundraising. A key accomplishment over the past year has been the establishment of communication protocol with Hamilton Fire Dispatch. This includes weekly testing, paging capacities, and radio voice communications over a dedicated city trunking radio system. In 2015, we participated in the Stony Creek Waterdown Christmas parades, maintained a safe perimeter around the fireworks for Canada Day and the closing ceremonies for Pan Am, as well as other boating safety activities through the area. Some of the examples of our taskings that we were on last year. June 4th, there was an extended search for a missing person after an abandoned fishing boat was found near Grimsby. We launched a second vessel, and we were able to keep those vessels in the water the majority of the evening until the search was called off. On June the 8th, we received a call from Hamilton Police to assist with the search for the missing swimmer in Binbrook Conservation Area. July 24th, we received a call for a boat on fire off of Hamilton Beach. We had our large boat in the water, launched and mobile within 15 minutes, at which time we were asked to stand down when it was confirmed to be a false alarm. August the 17th, we were alerted by the Coast Guard of 2 paddleboarders who were adrift. We were on the water training, doing a training exercise at the time. We were able to respond, and we were there in just under 4 minutes. At the request of the rescue center, we set up a shoreline search and proceeded to complete that when the paddleboarders were located on shore, safe. A letter that was sent to us from Mr. J.P. Sharp, who is the Regional Supervisor for Maritime Search and Rescue, was sent to Jim Coolin, who is the President of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and to ourselves. We received that letter September the 8th of 2014. Letter reads, Jim, just wanted to let you know the dedicated work that 3 of your units did this past weekend. As you may or may not have heard, there was a search most of Friday night and all day Saturday for a missing boater on the lower western region of Lake Ontario. The Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit, Grimsby Auxiliary Marine Rescue Unit, and Town of Oakville played major roles in getting this area searched, demonstrated great professionalism and dedication in their work. With their ability to keep the vessels crewed for prolonged periods of time, the stamina that they showed by staying on the water for so long, especially the Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit, who were able to provide a vessel for the search for Friday night as well as all day Saturday. Please pass us on to the appropriate district directors and unit leaders. And that was from Mr. Jean-Pierre Sharp, Regional Supervisor of Maritime Search and Rescue for all of Central and Arctic. In closing, the Rescue Unit respectfully requests the consideration of our 2016 budget in order to continue to serve our community and assist with police, fire, and EMS for any emergency that happens within the city. Thank you, and now for our slideshow. So our organization started in 1958, and we have over coming up to 60 years of continuing service within the community. In this picture here, you see the Jeep and the boats from the 1960s in front of our old storage building. That was built in the 1970s. This is the new storage facility that we now use, built in 2008. This is the 25-foot Stanley and a 22-foot limestone. The limestone is the one that I mentioned is being replaced at this time. This is the Tahoe that we currently have as well, and the limestone, and they're always ready to launch at a moment's notice. This was us assisting with the Hamilton Marine Unit and putting out a vessel fire in the bay. This is the current Stanley that we have right now, the 27-foot. We use it for patrols and emergency calls, obviously, from June to September, long weekends, and we're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This was the previous Savior, her Stanley vessel. It was in the boat lift. This is located at the end of Lakeside Drive in Hamilton, just off the beach there. This is the rescue unit assisting the police with the during the Red Hill and the QE flooding. They were asked to come out and to assist, and we sent out. We had four members that responded to that. Disabled vessel that we were towing through the canal. We're out on the lake there doing some talking with the Hamilton Marine Unit, figuring out, discussing patrol patterns or whatever for the for a weekend patrol. This is our Zodiac that we have, 18-foot Zodiac. We purchased that in 2008. And we can use that for the smaller inland lakes and waters. This is Rescue 161 and 906, the Econoline van that we have, and it's heading out to do some training exercises out on the lake. This is our, again, our current Stanley, Rescue 161. Doing some debriefing before a training exercise with the Coast Guard cutter Cape Storm. And then it's the Limestone's turn for the same debriefing. One of the training exercises was us towing the Cape Storm. Gives you a little bit of an idea on the size difference. This is 161 and 162 working with the helicopter from the 424 Squadron. This was 162, the Limestone, when the girl fell off the docks at Barangas. And we were there on scene providing assistance. Another picture from the same call. This is one of our winter training sessions on victim recovery, teaching the guys how to pull somebody out of the water who's nice and wet and slippery. one of our members involved in an ice training on the Hamilton Bay. This gives you an idea of some of the ice banks that can form along the Hamilton Beach. And as you can see in this picture, we do have the capabilities of getting people up on there and over the top as well. We do have the abilities with small aluminum boats to actually put them down and into the water. So we can actually put a boat in the water even with ice banks like that. This was us out assisting with the Hamilton Fire during evacuation for National Street when there was flooding there. Some more winter training. This was a mock training exercise that we had on one of the little ponds in behind Hutches. A few of the members there bringing the gear back from one of the training exercises out on the edge of the ice. This is the when we're promoting the Hamilton Beach Rescue Unit at the Stony Creek Christmas Parade. And then the last picture we have here is our new vessel that we've just taken possession a very short time ago. As you can see, we still got to get it lettered up and get it put into service and ready to go. That's all I have for the slides, and I do have a small quick video to play afterwards. Thank you very much. That's all I have for today. Sorry for the nervousness. Put me behind the helm of a boat, and I'm nice and cool, but in front of people, I fumble over my words quite a bit. Sorry about that.
Well, you did excellent, Chief Witherington. Thank you very, very much. Always great presentations, not just the slide, but the video from Hamilton Beach Rescue. And certainly commend you on coming in at zero. I'm going to go to speakers as Councillor Jackson. I have Councillor Partridge.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. Charlie, I admire what you do, and I dig the music. Very nice.
Thank you.
Charlie, just curious, by the way, you know you've had a long-time consistent supporter and ambassador for your rescue unit in Councillor Collins, and always making sure that your funds that you request for the minimum you need for the amount that we get, the biggest bang for the buck, is just outstanding, and I commend you for that, and above all, saving lives.
Thank you.
Other municipalities, do they benefit from Hamilton Beach Rescue? And just curious, if they do, any contributions, fee for service, possible small grant forthcoming? Madam Deputy Mayor, through you.
We do. Ultimately, I guess people would benefit. We have had a working relationship with Halton at one point, and then I'm not sure the particulars, but that fell by the wayside. So right now we are strictly within Hamilton. We patrol from the Burlington Canal to the 50-Point Marina within the Hamilton Harbor, all within Hamilton waters. The only time we go outside of that area is when we are responding on emergency taskings.
Okay, so you're doing that as the humanitarian rescue thing, so there's no formal, if you will, regular service to a neighboring municipality that might require a fee for service or possibly a grant?
No.
You're mostly 99% covering within Hamilton Harbor?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And Chief, I want to thank you for coming into the Waterdown Santa Claus Parade. I just have to comment that it is the only nighttime parade around, and when your boat came down with just lights ablazing, it was really beautifully done and quite popular amongst all those who attended. But I also want to, through you, Madam Chair, make comment on, I'm just amazed when I look at the budget and I look at all that you folks do. And understanding that it is, it's volunteer driven, which is significant. But I am just amazed at what you've accomplished and can accomplish with such a low budget. So I want to thank you very much for all the work that everyone in Beach Rescue does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. And I, being a boater and seen and have observed your activity on Lake Ontario a number of times on search, or going through exercises, I've never been so impressed with the professionalism, and always had a hello. I want to say that it's unfortunate that the relationship with Halton and the police, because the City of Hamilton had a joint thing going with Halton at one point in time, and that relationship or that partnership is no longer in play. Something that needs to be revisited, in my humble opinion. You patrol the harbor as well, you indicated. Do you patrol or just get called?
We will go into the harbor and look around, that sort of thing, just keep an eye on things as well as when we're out on the lake. It's quite often more for familiarization, right? We don't want to be going into an area that we don't know, especially with, even if we're out in the lake and we're towing somebody in, we tow them into quite a few of the Hamilton harbors, so we need to be able to go in there and investigate and find out where everybody is and how to get in and out of the harbors very easily.
So often Chief DeCare would talk about a police effort when a storm suddenly came up, and there was, I don't know if it was the kayakers or anyway, one of the clubs. They had their people out training, and they got caught. I don't know if one of the boats got tipped. Would you been called for something along that line, or is it just a matter of who's closest and on the water at the time attends?
Well, we could have definitely been called for that one. I believe I know which one you're referring to. We were not called out for that particular one. If I remember correctly, things did happen rather quickly. Hamilton Police were already on the water doing training exercises, I believe, and they were able to respond very quickly. And at that point, they realized they didn't need the extra vessels, so that we weren't called out for that. But we get called in as needed. So
if I was looking for a lower cost model in providing rescue on our water. You know, we pay pretty decent dollars to the police services. Would rescue, if you had additional funding, and certainly with your low cost model, be able to provide the search and rescue within the harbor that the police services claim they're doing?
Without looking at stuff in the background and that sort of stuff, it'd be a hard question to answer. I believe that the way we are running right now is if we are required and we get the call, we will go. As far as I know, in all the years that I've been in part of the membership and that sort of stuff, we have never missed a call that we've been asked to go out on.
I appreciate that. I think what I'm asking is because you're so efficient in what you do, and clearly there's a lot of pride in what you and your volunteers do. Obviously, it's a lower cost model. It's a service that we are blessed to have in addition to the other services we already pay for. I'm just trying to understand whether or not there's an opportunity to expand through a funding model or relationship to get get you on, or your individuals on the water more frequently, so that when things like that incident that took place, you would be readily available.
The issue that we have is that with people working full time and that sort of thing, that's our drawback right now. We are slowly working at increasing our numbers, training. We want to make sure that everybody is trained before they go out. But as we progress, we're slowly increasing our numbers, and ultimately we'll have the capabilities that maybe one day down the road that we could have a vessel on the water at any time.
Now, do your members have the same rights and privileges with their employers as, say, volunteer fire?
Some do, and it's up to the individual employer. I do have 2 members that leave work at a moment's notice. The other members, it's a little bit, they can if it's a second call out or something like that. It's something critical in regards to them responding from their work versus their residence.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Charlie, I also want to thank you again. And correct?
Well, I believe the letter we are coming in as 0%. Yeah.
Every year consistently. Correct. Strong advocate in myself, and I know is in his ward. Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. And we are actually participating with other community events, and so I want to been terrific in this year, which is certainly a good number and some of the other funding pressures that we're looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you again. We're going to go on Andrew Duncan, Director of Finance and Administration.
And with me, who has been here several years with me, Andrew Duncan, our Director of Finance Administration, who can get into the numbers. Today we're going to open up with a video, and then we have a presentation that you should have in front of you that I will go through, and then we'll open up for questions after that. So I guess everybody's there. Mr. Mayor, we'll get going. Is that a picture? Yes. Thanks. Yeah, for the okay. One mentioned, well, that is different when I speak into it. At the very start of the video, you're going to see some historic images of our iconic rock garden, and at the end, you'll see some images of the new one, which we'll get into in the further presentation. So, thank you.
For over 80 years, Royal Botanical Gardens has been a community leader in connecting people to plants and the natural world. RBG is Canada's largest botanical garden, a National Historic Site within a UNESCO World Biosphere Reserve. And through our mandated activities of conservation, education, science, and horticulture, we play a significant role as Canada's national leader in environmental stewardship, working to preserve and protect these lands while teaching people of all ages the importance of biodiversity and sustainability. Over 90% of Royal Botanical Gardens' 2,700-acre property resides within the city of Hamilton, including 3 kilometers of the Niagara Escarpment. This includes 7 separate access points and 2 visitor facilities. RBG property hosts the western arm of the Waterfront Trail between Bayfront Park and Princess Point. We protect and restore over 2,400 acres of these nature sanctuaries containing environmentally sensitive habitats. Of particular importance is Project Paradise, the largest restoration project of its kind in North America, working to restore the aquatic habitats of Cootes Paradise and Grindstone Creek marshes. RBG also leads the Cootes to Escarpment Eco Park system, working to protect ecological corridors, preserve and restore nature, and plan for sustainable recreation in the only corridor of natural lands that remain from Hamilton Harbour to the Niagara Escarpment. Education touches all parts of Royal Botanical Gardens. We work hard to bring people of all ages in contact with nature and have that connection last for the rest of their lives. We have developed customer programs to enhance outdoor learning experiences for all ages. Whether programs, camps, or through leading the province-wide Back to Nature network, much of our education efforts are to help kids reconnect with the outdoors. Through RBG's Growing Up Green program, we provide education and outreach programs, children's educational exhibits, and horticulture and conservation. In 2013, the Green Angels Subsidy Program was created so all children, regardless of their family's financial situation, have the opportunity to fall in love with nature. As a world leader in space, horticultural beauty, accessibility for visitors of all ages, and a brand new world-class facility. A regional hub for entertainment, exhibitions, a major wedding and corporate event destination. With continued support, RBG will reach even greater heights as a world-class tourism destination, a leader in horticultural expertise, and global leader in environmental achievement, helping to protect our city's backyard and ecosystems around the world.
Well, I hope that gives you just a bit of an insight as to the activities that RBG is involved in. And as you can see, we're a little bit more than a garden. We're all that and more. So we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation that I believe you have in front of you. And I'm just going to speak to the point that we see here. Okay, thank you. So in regard to celebrating beautiful plants and healthy lifestyles, 5 major gardens, including themes like the Mediterranean plants, a large rose garden, lilac collection, medicinal plants, and demonstrations of home gardens. This is what you'll see in all of our garden areas. We have outdoor activities all year long, including gardening for kids, hikes on trails, crafts, music, food, and much, much more. We have winter exhibits, annual festivals and events. In fact, we just opened our reptile rendezvous this past Saturday, and if it's anything as successful as our frog exhibit last year, we're off to a good start. We had 50,000 people come through last year in January, February, and March, and we're hoping for the same this year. And of course, we have a major educational program where we have courses, public programs, camps, and signature experiences like canoeing and moonlight tours. This This is a map. You saw an image of the Coots to Escarpment Eco Park system, but this is a map that we have in our front entrance that identifies our properties. And so this is RBG Center. This is our new rock garden location. This is our arboretum. These are the escarpment properties that we have that we talk about being part of the World UNESCO system. This goes all the way into Dundas, Coots Paradise. So it just goes to show, and then this is York Boulevard, Dundee Castle's here. And the divide between Hamilton and Burlington goes something like that. So you can see 90% of RBG's property is actually in Hamilton. And we, as you know, we get funding from the regional municipality of Halton region as well in support. And our core funder, obviously, is the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport from the province of Ontario. So these are some sneak peek of images of our new rock garden that we, as indicated, will be opening officially on April 29th, and then in May we'll have a series of special celebratory activities taking place through the first couple of weeks of May, and then open to the public after that. The image, the facility that is at the top is the new visitor center that you can now see when you drive along York Boulevard. At one time you could drive out from between Hamilton and Burlington and drive right by the rock garden not knowing anything is there. Now you'll see quite an interesting building, and we expect people to say, hey, we've got to stop there. That's the big plan. And a little bit of history behind this rock garden project. And unfortunately, we had an invite and a tour lined up, and we've had subsequent chats with different councillors around the room here, and I got to about half of you, but if you haven't had a chance to get out there, we will show you at any time. Just give us a call and we can make arrangements to see it. This is a world-class facility. It always was, but over an 80-year period, it was completely overgrown and broken. Everything within it, all the infrastructure was shot. The stairs were unsafe. So this wonderful $20 million, I'll get into that a little bit further, but I just wanted to express what this is, a world-class attraction that Hamilton is going to benefit from. We want to go back to the 40s and the 50s when everybody who came to Hamilton had to see this as a must-see attraction. That's where we're heading, and we're hoping it all happens in May and continues on. This could be a leverage for support for RBG for many years to come. And this is the visitor center that overlooks the bowl of the rock garden. This was set up for a thank you dinner for our donors, which we had a fairly successful campaign. We still got a little ways to go, but thanks to the help of Senator Braley, we've raised quite a bit of money from the community. And just a couple of these images, believe it or not, are in the fall, late fall, and the garden just looks spectacular. It will be a year-round garden. It'll be used in the evenings as well. We have lighting and sound. It's quite a dramatic place. So a little bit more highlights on the rock garden rejuvenation. It was a $20 million investment in strategic public infrastructure built in Hamilton. $14 million of the project came from the Ontario and federal government. It was split down the middle. And then we had $6 million, as I mentioned, in community contributions. We've always viewed this as a new gateway to Hamilton and a York Boulevard beautification, which, if you look at the history of RBG, that's what we were originally laid out for. Not for Royal Botanical Gardens when it was first laid out, but it was for the city of Hamilton and its public Parks Board with T.B. McQuestion. He wanted a grand entrance into Hamilton when this is before the 403 and the QEW. This is when York Boulevard was part of Highway 2. And they had an abandoned gravel pit that he wanted to beautify, and that's what happened. Over the years, in 1941, we became a provincial funded institution with the Hamilton and the Halton region, and became our own entity with a board of directors in 1941. So you'll see in the building, as I mentioned, there's international iconic architecture. We have won awards for the top, being one of the top 5 gardens in North America. We intend to maintain that level of expertise and excellence. The rock garden will build on Hamilton's global brand and as I mentioned, will be opening on April 29th, 2016. You'll be getting something to hold that date in your calendars for the invite. So with that, I'd highlight some of the RBG's contributions to the City of Hamilton. We have environmental sustainability. As you saw on the video, we're as much as a mini conservation authority within RBG as we are a horticultural display garden. We're also an educational establishment that promotes environmental sustainability and living well, living good, and doing things the right way. We have community and social development. We have economic vitality, and most of all, I think what RBG offers the City of Hamilton is a quality of life. Regarding the environmental protection, we have almost 1,000 hectares, or as the video says, 2,700 acres. It's actually about 2,742 acres now. You may have saw in the paper that RBG was one of a couple of purchasers that acquired property in the Pleasant View lands. This was all part of the Coots to Escarpment Eco Park system of trying to garner property to keep green for future generations. This area is, believe it or not, one of Canada's richest places for biodiversity. Some of our staff call it an ecological hotspot because of the different numbers of plants and fauna that are on our properties right here in the City of Hamilton. A nationally recognized habitat for birds, turtles, and endangered plants. As mentioned in the video as well, the ecological restoration projects since the 1940s protecting Coots Paradise Marsh flood protection asset. Research and education programs on ecosystem management, fighting invasive species, and working with the harbor restoration, which is key for Coots Paradise being in good shape. The images show some of the school programs at our fishway, planting programs in the marsh, and the top, the successful mating and breeding of the American eagle. We've had 3 years of successful eaglets being raised right on the shore of Coots Paradise, which is a testament to the work that's being done, the water clarity, and the fish that are within Coots Paradise now. On the community development side, we have 60,000 plus educational visitors, 70,000 students, 36 of these are from Hamilton schools. We have broken the 16,000 membership, which is a great feat. Our long-term goal is 30,000, so we're more than halfway there. 49% of our members live in Hamilton. We have 350 volunteers, representing 40,000 plus hours of volunteer service. We provide volunteers and people a place to contribute back to the society. As mentioned, we have a Green Angels program that supports 1,200 kids from disadvantaged Hamilton families. We offered 1,000 family passes provided to Syrian refugee settlement program just recently. It's estimated that we have 250,000 recreational users of RBG trails and marshlands, I should say, in Hamilton. If you saw out there on last Sunday, there's probably 1,000 people skating on Coots Paradise. So that's the kind of thing we provide. As a result of recent campaigns and our overall fundraising program that we have at RBG, we can now probably say we're supported by companies like ArcelorMittal, Hamilton Port Authority, Hamilton Spectator, CHCH, David Braley, Ron Joyce Foundation, etc. So we're at a stage in our evolution that we're starting to attract private donorship. The economic vitality, RBG's operations create $14.3 million in local GDP. We support 181 jobs and generate $5.5 million in total tax revenue. RBG's 270,000 plus paid visitors in 2015 generated $23.6 million in visitor spending in the region. When we say 270,000 plus paid visitors, you can imagine when you see the map how challenging it is to control people to pay admissions. It's one of our biggest challenges, along with the fragmentation of all our property for a visitor coming to one area. Getting them to see all of it in a visitor-friendly time is another challenge. RBG is the most visited tourist destination between Toronto and Niagara Falls when you use these numbers. RBG is an internationally recognized institution that can be positioned as a brand-building asset for Hamilton. On the economic vitality side as well, RBG is a key asset for Hamilton's economic development sector strategy. The agribusiness, I believe, in the greater Hamilton The general Hamilton area is $6.3 billion. This is agriculture, floriculture, the growing of cut flowers, garden centers, that whole thing. It's big business in the area. And in 2017, we're proud to say that RBG is hosting the American Public Gardens Association annual conference. This represents 800 delegates from about 600 botanical gardens and arboretum around North America. And they will be coming in June of 2017. 3,000 room nights using the convention center here in town. On the creative sector, we're a music venue and film TV location. We have, during the season, we have country and jazz on a weekly basis, and that's a growing thing, and we expect that to continue with the addition of the Rock Garden. And clean tech conservation projects and research, we are really a hub for that, and we, thanks to many grants that we are able to obtain, do a lot of work on the environmental side, all for the betterment of our property and for the local community. And then to close on the quality of life, RBG's gardens, its natural lands and marshland management improve air and water quality. And the accessibility of RBG's parklands contributes to improving Hamilton residents' health and wellness. And RBG is an asset that attracts people and businesses to locate in Hamilton. So RBG's budget request, and we can say we've been here with zeros many times and been good followers of that, but it's catching up to us. So we made a submission this time, and it's respectfully request that the City of Hamilton consider an annual contribution, moving its annual contribution from just under $600,000 in 2015 to $736,295. Represents an increase of $137,089. This strategy behind this is that this will bring the City of Hamilton's investment in RBG's annual operating budget to the same amount as the region of Halton. What you see here is a summary from 2004 to 2015 on the funding amounts both from the City of Hamilton and Halton region. Five years of zero and then small increases prior to that. What's happening is the small increases that we've been getting from Halton region, here the gap gets bigger and significantly more than the City of Hamilton now. Bullock stood in for me last year and indicated that we would be doing the same. So the Royal Botanical Gardens obviously appreciate over the years. This a difference between the two regional funding. Which we're very proud of. In summary, Botanical Gardens is just a $20 million public infrastructure project in Hamilton. RBG's programs and operations support local.
Excellent presentation. Thank you for all the quality information. And I'm going to go to a speakers list. I have Mayor Eisenberger, I have Councillor Green, Councillor Whitehead, and Councillor Ferguson to start off. Mayor Eisenberger.
Thank you very much, Mark, and great presentation as usual, and great work that you're doing at the RBG. You know what, full disclosure, I was an RBG board member, proud RBG board member for 6 or 7 years back a few years ago. And, you know, the work that was happening then and what's continued has been nothing short of spectacular. I mean, we can think about the Coots Paradise work and now the renewed Rock Garden, which I had the opportunity to have a look at, is absolutely spectacular. I think it's going to be a major attraction, I have no doubt. Not only for visitors to the gardens themselves, which are wonderful, but the building that's ahead of that is, I think, a great opportunity for people to get use out of a new facility that certainly is much improved over the lovely tea garden that used to be in the back there. So a long history of the work in Hamilton, and you know, an understanding that 2/3 of the RBG, the Royal Botanical Gardens, is in fact in Hamilton. I was often perplexed how Halton kind of conceded the notion that they should pay more based on when you know most of the intrinsic value, the environmental value, a lot of that actually accrues to the city of Hamilton. But I think that's in my mind almost a non-issue. I think it's a shared resource, and I've always believed that we ought to be looking at it as a 50-50 arrangement with Burlington and Halton. In fact, they might feel a little cheated in Halton based on the quality of work we're getting in Hamilton for all of the lands that you're overseeing. And, you know, in any organization that supports mating and breeding, you know what's not to love. So, having said all of that, you know, it's certainly a significant ask in terms of the number that would leap to $137,000 more all in one shot. Probably might be a large leap for most. I'm not so sure that it's an outrageous one, but it is based on a formula, though, Mark. So, you know, going back to, you know, your slide, which showed, maybe you can go back to that, the one that showed the over time growing disparity was not based on an unwillingness to help and support and fund. It was based on a formula. So the formula was based on assessment growth and what was the assessment growth, and what was the other? Essentially assessment.
Housing starts, I believe it's related to.
Housing starts, right. So clearly, you know, assessment growth and housing starts in Halton would have eclipsed Hamilton's, you know, over the years. And over time, that may change, and that certainly is starting to happen in Hamilton. But that certainly then has led to, you know, a disparity in terms of the numbers, although we're following the formula as it's been laid out, as I understand it. So you're really making a case for today. Let's not follow the formula anymore. Let's just go to a 50-50 arrangement with Burlington Halton.
Primarily, that's we're asking to revisit the formula.
So Madam Chair, I'm not adverse to going there, and I think there's lots of reasons why it has value, and you know, I've mentioned a few of them, and we've got a great presentation. We didn't talk about the Coots to the Escarpment work that the RBG is doing in a partnership with the Hamilton Conservation Authority, which is another spectacular opportunity to add environmental sustainable value to our community, city of Hamilton specifically. So I think there's excellent value here, and I think there's a strong case to be made to making a 50-50 arrangement. My question would be, and I think we talked about this, is how do we get there? And you know, I mean, taking that, you know, we also, if every organization takes a large hit on the budget, in this particular instance, to phase it over a few years, I think that would certainly be open to, you know, having you kind of sit down with staff and great representative, Councillor John, got a phased approach that doesn't take the hit at all in 1 year, but gets us there notwithstanding, so that we are kind of reflect and keep the in Burlington. It is an unusual but very valuable shared resource that we get benefit from, and there's absolutely locally people go and many people should, and many people will once they see the rock garden and the great work there. It's wow. There's going to be wild. I'd like to. Maybe Councillor Johnson would like to, you know, recommend and then have a 50-50 formula that we can all be. It'll be simple. It'll be clean. It'll be neat. Not based on assessment issues and based on value to both of our communities. And I think, for all intents and purposes, you know, 2/3 of the value is coming to the city of Hamilton. So thank you for all your great work, and I hope we can figure out a way of getting there, and I'm sure that we can do that before too long. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got Councillor Green.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor, and I think, you know, certainly we're going to have a lot of these presentations throughout the course of the budget. I know a little bit of stickers, budgets that they brought in, and seeing presentations, they've been fantastic operation with zero budgets. But there's no way I could support rejigging this formula, understanding the complexities, the pressures that were being put on by some of the other conservation authorities in these similar types of situations. And so I guess my question is, in being on your web page here, you know, a a $12 entrance fee. Where do most of your visitors come from?
It's pretty close to the same split as the membership. So
the majority of your visitors are coming from out of town and enjoying it.
We get many from outside, and we used to get American tourists, but
with the dollar where it is, it's a tough one.
We have to get a lot more of those.
Because what you're hearing around the table, I'm sure, even with our own recreational services, we're having to create harmonization around user fees that create equity across all of our city-owned facilities. And the question is, in doing this math, and what is the increase on the
in 2016?
So it seems like a very aggressive revenue. You probably receiving through both user fees and
approve a strategic plan. Very aggressive, and RBG has been a bit of a roller coaster. We want to be the environmental leadership and to the next level of being the #1 attraction.
I would almost respectfully disagree, Madam Deputy Mayor, in that I think your communities, you've done great being fiscally restrained, and there's a formula around it each and every, but a 22% conservation authority. So I'll just leave it there. I can appreciate and ask, or an equalization to change the formula. I think it's irresponsible at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor.
Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Where's the headquarters and main office for RBG? Is that in Hamilton?
It's in Southern Ontario.
Oh, is it in Burlington or is it in Hamilton?
It is in Burlington, officially in Burlington.
And you have a lot of great events and revenue generation in regards to access and activity at that particular building?
We do.
And Burlington would probably be the major benefactor in regards to the hospitality industry as a result of the activity levels at that main office, that main building?
I would think that was shared. I would honestly think that would be shared between two
communities. Have you ever done an assessment on where most of these people are staying?
No, we have not.
Thank you.
I think, if I may, Madam Chair, that's one of the reasons we have invested on the other side of the border, if we want to go there, into the Hamilton area. That is going to be another venue. There's going to be many, many activities taking place there, and we're in the middle of two cities at the Rock Garden. So where do they stay? Where does that
Well, I think I'm sort of looking at the historic view of the RBG. I mean, I would have preferred, because at one time those lands were, if I understand it right, owned by the city of Hamilton. The net benefit now is in the context of Burlington, because creatures of habit, if you're attending the RBG facility and you're an out-of-towner, you're going to attend hotels and motels that are reasonably close to that particular facility. And I'd love to see the data on whether or not Hamilton is benefiting from those overnight stays versus Hamilton relative to the activity level at the RBG. I guess the other thing is that we know that Oakville's being stated as one of the richest and wealthiest communities in Canada. We know that the disposable income in Hamilton is a challenge compared to the Halton region. So we know that everything we do has a greater impact on disposable income in our community than it does in the Halton region. So these are some of the pressures that we deal with. We got a higher poverty rate in Hamilton than Halton has. We have greater level social service issues in Hamilton than Halton has. So we have many other issues. We said no to $350,000 to a trustee program, which was a great program that was providing for people in need. So these are the pressures that we need to deal with holistically. So when you come in and ask for I see a 28% ask. Is that correct? The 22 or 28?
But
23 almost.
yeah,
23%, okay.
22.8, I think it is.
And I guess when you develop a formula, the thing about formulas is they can change over, not the formula itself, but the revenue balance can shift over time based on that very formula. So, for example, Hamilton has experienced a pretty good growth period the last number of years, over $1 billion or $1.4 billion on an annualized basis for the last several years. So there certainly is growth.
I tell you, it has no leadership, the things that are happening there.
When I believe that the formula that is being put forward is a balanced a formula that recognizes the challenges I've already identified. And it's also can change depending on the activity in those communities and change the balance of the revenue that you are generating from each community depending on those assessments. So I want to make sure I highlight. The other piece that I got a phone call this morning that really, do you incorporate fair wage policy to all your workers? You have a fair wage, or sorry, not fair wage, livable wage policy. Let's start with that first.
Minimum wage policy?
So, livable wage.
Livable wage. No, I wouldn't.
No, so the city has values here, and we passed a livable wage policy. We're contributing a significant amount of money to RBG, and you haven't adopted that. The other issue I was going to ask is I got Hamilton building contractors, what's it called, Hamilton Brantford Building Trades. So I got a call from them this morning, and they had indicated that the number of works that has taken place at the RPG has basically shut out many of the Hamilton organizations in regards to those procurements, those construction contracts. So do you have a fair wage policy?
No, we do not have a fair wage policy.
Don't have a fair wage policy. So many Hamilton workers that follow our current process are shut out of the opportunities in regards to your redevelopment at the RBG?
If you're referring to a recent development at the Rock Garden, we had a construction manager, but there was a mix of union and non-union people on that job.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm just going to ask, Mark, can you just speak into the microphone?
Sorry.
I'm getting concerns not being able to hear you. Thank you.
So is there any assessment or ability to we understand whether or not Hamiltonians are getting a fair shot at the contracts laid out by the RBG?
Well, I said we didn't have the policy, but I can assure you that we're not doing anything that's going to...
Well, that's not what I've been told. That's why I'm asking the question.
Well, I would need further information on that before I can comment.
So there are other issues that I am concerned about in regards to the vision, quality of life, equity, fair wage, livable wages. These are all values that this council has espoused. You are a major fund receiving of funds from the city of Hamilton at over 45%. So it concerns me that you come in at 28%, but you have policies that are outdated and don't match the values of this community. So for those reasons, I'm having a real challenge to accept 22%.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Aidan Johnson, Councillor Tom Jackson, Councillor Collins, and Councillor Jason Farr. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Mark, welcome. And as the Mayor said, I want to thank you for the tour you took us on the Rock Gardens. I always enjoy going there as a family with our young girls and touring it, and I'll certainly be back next spring again once it's up and running. But I love the water passage through there and all the plants you've put in, and it's been around a long time, but it needed to be refurbished, so congratulations on that. Just on the issue of your request to get balance with Halton, was Halton able to express to you what is wrong with the current formula? It seems to me housing starts and assessment is a measurement of revenue, which seems like a reasonable way to put a formula together. What is Halton's counter argument to that? Do you know?
Well, we're actually setting up meetings right now with Halton Region to go over all of this. So,
what triggered this then, the change?
What triggered it was the gap, the definite gap that was happening, and that's what I brought to council over the last couple of years, that for an organization that has its roots in the city of Hamilton, and really it has so much to do with Hamilton. And I know we're getting into a boundary role, and I don't want to go there. It's not Burlington that supports Halton and mayors of Milton saying, so it's no different than staff don't even view Hamilton Burlington. The only time we do is when we have a particular one that spreads through.
You're not necessarily.
I know it gets equal value out of RBG as
right. You know, Halton's clearly a more wealthier jurisdiction than Hamilton is. They didn't go through the industrial meltdown that we've gone through and lost millions and millions and millions of dollars assessment, telco and other industries. They don't have the housing issues that we do, so social housing issues that we do. And, you know, they seem to be, if you stand back and watch what's happening, they seem to be far wealthier. And a good example, this would be every one of them, Halton retimes the rate of inflation. And we try to push back. They say, too bad, so sad, we don't care. We'll drag you before. And that's offensive to me when they do that. But it tells me again that Halton's wealthier. They can absorb these, 5, 6, 7%, 4% this year increases. And so it's not the issue. It's an issue of affordability, where they don't face the same pressures that we do. Higher than ours, and of course, our service looks.
Through you, Madam Chair.
So, in my mind.
Through you, Madam Chair. More from Hamilton. That's why it's here. But we're willing to talk with council, with staff, and even if it's more than phasing, if there are other pockets, if there's things that we do that would assist through separate funding grants that you may have, we're open to all of that right now.
Okay, and last question is, do you always, by policy, award your contracts to lowest qualified bidder?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eden-Johnson, member of the RBG Board.
Thanks very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. And I'd like to echo the thanks that Mayor Fred and some of the other councillors have expressed toward the RBG for all the great service they give the region. Ward 1 benefits disproportionately from the beauty of the Royal Botanical Gardens because Ward 1 encompasses Cootes Paradise, which for so many people in West Hamilton is the ultimate green space. And certainly in my own development as a human being, Cootes Paradise played a pivotal role, and that's why I wanted to serve on the RBG board. At the appropriate time, I would like to move the motion that Mayor Fred proposed, which is for talks between the RBG and staff to discuss the best next steps for a fair treatment of the RBG within our budget process and a sustainable treatment of the RBG within our budget process. Thank you very much.
Councillor Johnson, sorry, Mark, did you want to say something?
I just said thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, I'll come back to you at the end of the speakers list. Thank you. I have Councillor Tom Jackson.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. Mark, Andrew, good to see you. Thank you for the tour about that you gave me on a very cold January day a couple of weeks ago. Can you just go back about 5 slides, please, Andrew, to your community development slide? I would appreciate that. And terrific. That's great. Andrew, if you could just, thank you. So, Madam Deputy Mayor, I have felt for a number of years that the RBG, similar to what I had felt back in the 90s about the art gallery when I was on the daily newspaper, quite a significant story questioning whether they were reaching out to members to get increased number of memberships, volunteers, private sector funding opportunities, things like that, and took a fair bit of criticism back then with the art gallery. And so fast forward, I've felt over the number of years the RBG, in my humble opinion, had been underperforming, not adequate, not sustainable, a good showing of is a significant it's a really good foundation. So, and then the final books that community that they treasure. So, Madam Deputy Mayor, through to Mark or Andrew, maybe just volunteers and bullet points. Through you, Madam Deputy. Please, Mark, if you can.
Other items, the educational visitors growing area as well. 50 volunteers goes up and down, but it's not gone. I have a goal of 1,000. We want to open up helping us raise funds through plant sales and Christmas sales, but we need their brains and their day-to-day operation. So with busing of schools that can't afford to come out and get. So that's a growing on that, and that's a ballpark figure. It's where there's parking, and we hate parking at those things, but I think. And then the last one, it was a 6 campaign that Mr. Braley put out. Raise that $4 million. We that, and we got about to finish leverage to keep the people that have fundraised there, to keep money coming into RBG so that we can go on for many years to come.
Thanks for the elaborations, Mark. I think that's important to know. And the tour boat that was available to all members of council, correct, you had put out that, and so I had a free afternoon that day to join you. So thank you for elaborating. And Mark, and I recall when we ended our tour boat before, then you informed me about what your revised original request would have been within the 1% guideline, but somewhere along the way you folks revised the request to the current 137,000 you're asking now. Madam Deputy Mayor, through to Mark or Andrew, is that correct? Given the 1% guideline, as all boards and agencies were.
Yes, we were.
So I'm trying to understand along the process and along your time frame when the decision was made. And passed, as in the last few weeks, that you know what, we want to play catch up, or was this made back months ago? I think I understand that better.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. No, this has been an ongoing discussion, I would say, for a couple of years at RBG, that we needed to look at the amount that we're getting from the two
what I'm trying to say is on your slide, if you just, Andrew, fast forward 2 or 3 slides where you got the RBGs. Two or 3 or 4 years. Halton this year, knowing our line for all boards and agencies, the optics of this would appear to be, you know what, we're going to do our best to catch up this year. So through you to Mark or Andrew, I'm trying to understand the mindset of what brought you to, we're going to bring that entire request this year and we want to get caught up this year. I'm trying to understand that, Mark.
We discussions with the finance department, way to go, and we were budget and we had to put in what we're hoping for, and at that stage then we have to submit our budget to the city.
Submitted on that requested day, we submitted the amount, which
the full 22% here.
Yeah, the full amount, which would have been
A little bit of a gap there on that explanation, Andrew. So run in our city, being the Royal Botanical Gardens, but rich neighbors, our wealthier neighbors, west, the Grimsby, reaction. Is a non-starter for me, again, because of our average per income, the poverty issue. We've come a long way, but under advisement and as a factor. But if the mayor and Councillor Aiden staff for a review, so be it. But that's all.
I have Councillor Farr, Councillor Connolly, and Councillor Johnson coming up.
Mr. Speaker, I would commit the same. I would welcome bring back to us got the percent providing a visual strap. You want to be, quote, top place in Canada to visit. Advisor, who's the judge of what list are you going by, which resource top place in Canada to visit? Put this with your strap plan through you.
Well, the word we got is there are ways of information through.
Oh. Through you. So your strap plan to be the top visit is basically to maintain being the top.
Of our operation.
Okay.
So that's me saying that.
So you first bullet RBG operates creates 14.3 side the center the RBG probably pay property tax to Halton.
Based on the province's
and then finally, the agribusiness. We on a planning committee often have debated this and last term of council. There's a lot of agribusiness. Councillor Pasuta, his ward houses many of these very successful companies. I've learned a great deal being on planning committee about the agribusiness and particularly how successful it's been and how it contributes to the overall economy in Ontario and how much business it does just out of our Hamilton region. So is there also a way to look at how much of this $6.3 billion in agribusiness that you're doing also breaks down Halton versus Hamilton? If you could come back with that statistic.
We're open to looking at anything you need in our discussions that we have.
Great. It would be helpful. I mean, you're hearing a prevailing theme from some. You have support from others, which is completely understandable because it is a jewel. None of us are going to argue the great job you've been doing in maintaining this jewel. It is a tremendous attraction across Canada. There's undoubtedly. And I like that you not only have worked with us, but also philanthropists in our community to raise millions and millions to do just what your strategic plan has been suggesting these years, which is to increase that attraction and make it better. You're not ever resting on your laurels at the RBG. And when I first heard about the 23%, I thought, oh, all this wonderful, this is why on on this line item and this line item and this line item would make me a lot more comfortable making a decision.
Very, very good. Good suggestion.
Okay. So thank you, Mark. Ultimately on the wonderful work that the Royal Botanical Gardens
Thank you
does,
very much.
and the reputation it brings Hamilton.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Conley.
A new motel, new condos, and new waterfront, and we've spent tons of money. Entertainment, we've spent what, $500 and something thousand last year for our entertainment section. Just knew we had to. The Gardens is something that's been there probably longer than most of us have been born. I can remember going there as a kid, so it's been around a long time. And it's some trying to improve itself, trying to make itself a world-class place, and it's pretty close to that now. And they're a little short. And it's not, I don't want to keep up with Halton. I don't care what Halton gives them. I really don't. I care what we give them, but I think I like to be a little more open and see if we can help in some way. I hate paying second fiddle to anyone, and especially Halton or anybody else. So I've heard no, we should give them the 1%, and I've heard let's look at some alternatives. I'm going to keep my mind open and look at everything. I'm not going to close my mind. I think some of the things that Councillor Farr said is good to know for information. It's really good to know where we stand, and I'm sure they can get those numbers for us. So I'm just going to wait and see. I want to hear the motion, and I want to hear what's going on. I want to hear the answers for what the RBG is going to bring back to us, and let's do what's best for Hamilton. Let's not look at it as 1% and that's it, and everybody else can do what they want. So, anyways, I thought I'd just say something. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson, Brenda Johnson.
Yep, thank you, Deputy Mayor. This just feels like Groundhog Day for me. Yeah. Given the fact that we're sitting now in a tribunal with one of the conservation authorities to discuss the very idea of changing a formula, and we were so adamantly against that, and now we have another formula sitting in front of us. It's in this, I can't support this. I still want to shout out to your staff that what a great job, and it's very beautiful, and it very much is an asset, as all the boards and agencies that are coming forward today. But given the spirit that we're in, and not even to look at the formula, I find out what happens at the tribunal first, and I think that it's all part of
Halton Region, City of Hamilton.
How many representatives are both? But if they decide that they want to go in a direction where they want to put massive investment in the community, we're now then.
So I think we're suggesting equality in terms of I would suggest if you're building a new model, you would exclude major changes from one side or the other.
The reason why I ask that is because the deficit that you have articulated here today is due to decisions that were made by Halton's region, and when they're in their budget process, they decide they want to bump up. They have the autonomy to do year after year, but if we change this funding model, if we start to go in that direction of the 50, then council essentially begins to lose its autonomy over making local decisions. And I get it. I think I tweeted it out that you guys are caught between a rock and a hard place. But when we get caught in our situations with you as one agency amongst many, and we have to make tough decisions at community and emergency services all the time on agencies and on funding, it becomes very difficult. So like one of the comments of one of my earlier colleagues quietly, I would much rather see you guys continue to be excellent where you are in your field, to grow your membership first, go to the market. You've already aggressively raised your rates and continue to get your funding that way rather than come back to the general levy, the taxpayers of Hamilton, to subsidize that program. So I'll stay firm there. I'm not confident that going in the direction of rejigging the formula is the best thing for our community and our taxpayers. It was made for a reason. It had good rationale. And as my previous colleague had stated, there'll be ups and downs. There might be 10 years from now when it's completely reversed and we have a disproportionate amount. That's the kind of longitudinal up. So I'm sorry, but I can't support any motion that will go in that direction.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead, second time.
Well, I'm really proud of Councillor Johnson's comments because I think that really is the crux and principal issue that we have to deal with. I mean, I raised issues with the Grand River in regards to the formula and how it's weighted and how there's an inequity in what we contribute relative to, because we don't pull water from the Grand River system. We don't put wastewater or stormwater in the system, and yet that has no bearing. It's all assessment based. So we don't have control of any of those things, and this formula that applies to RPG is no different. So I guess my concern is you come in here and ask for 22% increase, but you're not asking to reflect that on the governance board to ensure that there's 50% representation from both communities. Why is that?
Maybe through you, Madam Chair, and I will address that. The formula, from what we understand, goes back to 2003. If we go back in history, that's when RBG had some very serious financial difficulties. And a lot of things were done to keep things running. And between Hamilton, Halton region, the province of Ontario, an entire mandate review was done to determine whether a botanical garden was relevant in the province of Ontario, whether a mandate was correct, and to discuss ways of turning things around. And the three partners got together, and there was a one-time transitional funds that was provided to RBG to put towards keeping things going and improving on things. And that's when the formula was introduced. And I'm saying that over the past 10 years, the momentum is going on the right direction. Everything's good, but we want to go to the next level. And I think it's different circumstances, and maybe it's time to revisit the formula and revisit the way our partners are funding us. That's really what we came here today. Whether the strategy was right or wrong, I don't know, by putting the full amount there to balance things out, but that's what we thought was fair at the time. We fully understand the pressures around the city of Hamilton, totally understand that. But we've been towing the line with the zeros. And as you know, running a city, there are expenses and they do go up. And we've invested $20 million in an attraction that we hope is going to help the whole city with increased visitation, excitement. For Hamilton to say we got this in our backyard, not only just the garden, I can't stress enough, and I will do, the conservation efforts that we do are as good, if not equal or better, than the conservation authorities. I'm telling you, that's a fact. So I'm very encouraged to hear that there's an opportunity, maybe through a motion, that we can revisit and just discuss things as far as the support of the city of Hamilton into the Royal Botanical Gardens. If those discussions turn out that we look at the layout of the act actually needs to be amended anyway. So there is an opportunity where we could change that representation and have it equal if that's the way. I can certainly see that happening. So these are all things that we could discuss, and I look forward to having the discussions.
I just wanted to point out something too, just relating to your comment. I feel that we're different from the conservation authorities in terms of our ask. We understand that the funding to RBG is discretionary. And that's where we're different. We're never going to end up in a tribunal with the city of Hamilton. We have a level of funding. We appreciate it a lot. We're trying to come in and we're trying to demonstrate what we do for the community, and we're hoping to get an increase in funding. So I feel it is different from that, and in terms of determining a formula and not being open to a formula. Like a formula, again, would be discretionary and wouldn't end up with any kind of battles if there were issues in the future.
So, but you can understand the stark contrast. You come in here and ask us to be a 50% partner, but there's no mention that we'll be a 50% partner at the table in your ask, and it leaves it wanting in regards to that structure. And I want to highlight that.
Fair enough.
The other, and I want to highlight this because I have a habit of asking tough questions and coming across perhaps a bit negative, but I mean I want to make it clear that RBG is a jewel. The dedication of the staff and the board members is absolutely incredible. And yes, it is a drop. So I want to make it absolutely, put that on record. I don't have any issues. I think you do an incredible job. The issue is really a financial one. And when you look at a 22% increase, and you indicate you came in 0.000, you had the same option as anyone else, and you could have came in at 1%, 1.5%, 2%. But even if you did that, this 20% is far outweighs that 2% or 2.5% per year, even if you made those asks. So this is even far exceeds that scenario. Now, the Halton, for example, is coming in and requesting, I think it's around 5%. It only represents about $100,000 or something, but the principal, 5%. You're asking for $137,000, which is representing a 22%. So the pressure that we have, any of those organizations coming and asking money from the city of Hamilton and increases, and the reason why we try and cap those percentages is because it's like the death of 1,000 cuts. If we don't control those costs, then our taxpayers will pay for it. So Councillor Conley, God love him, I appreciate everything he said. But having said that, I'm not an individual that wants to lose control of our ability and capacity in this community to pay for our residents to pay taxes. That's what my driving force is. So
Understood.
but I do appreciate, and I want to make this clear, you do a heck of a job, your whole organization. And I don't want to leave that without putting that on record.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, just before Councillor Johnston, I think you want to put your motion forward now, and I want to firstly just thank you both for coming, answering some heated questions, and I certainly am supportive of growing up with Royal Botanical Gardens in my backyard. I certainly appreciate everything that's gone on. The tremendous evolution over time of improvements has been phenomenal. I concur with Councillor Johnson. There's a lot that's going on in Ward 1, and you have to be commended for what you're doing. So with that, Councillor Johnson, you want to put your motion forward, sir?
Thanks very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. And this is seconded by Mayor Fred, that staff be directed to work with RBG and Halton Region to review possible alternative funding models for more sustainable funding of the RBG prior to the end of our 2016 budget cycle. And I'll speak to it if I may.
And your seconder is Mayor Eisenberger, correct?
Is.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
So the best arguments...
Mr. Chair, normally these are the presentations. Okay. We have delegations here, so I'm going to call a point of order. It isn't appropriate to be putting motions forward at this point. That is reserved to the back end of the GIC meeting. And I prefer to have that debate when we deal with Councillor Jackson had a motion that he served notice on. We need to treat this process with consistency. So to deal with this motion now is premature. We need to do it under the motion section and not hang up the delegations or the delegates that are still waiting.
Received the presentation, Councillor. I did recognize Councillor Aidan Johnson.
It's a point of order, Madam Chair, and I think you need to order.
Thank you, and I'll ask the clerk to clarify.
Through you, Mr. Deputy, or through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, because we're actually speaking to the matter and the motion is respecting this matter, it's not inappropriate to move it at this time as we have done in the past. Councillor Jackson was still preparing, so he chose to wait until after, but because we're on this matter, we should really receive and allow the presenters to be seated.
And Councillor Aidan Johnson, if committee is so concerned, we can receive the presentation, have the presenters take a seat. I can do that. I'll turn back to Councillor Johnson to receive the presentation. Councillor Whitehead, you'd like to second that? All in favour? Thank you, gentlemen. Councillor Johnson, back to you, sir.
Thank you very much. So just to clarify, Madam Chair, we've received our presentation for the RBG. Thanks very much, gentlemen. And I've already read aloud my motion. I'll read it out aloud again, just so everyone is clear about what it is. Seconded by Mayor Eisenberger, that staff be directed to work with RBG and Halton Region to review possible alternative funding models for more sustainable funding of the RBG prior to the end of our 2016 budget cycle. And if I may speak to it, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Yes, you may, Councillor.
I would propose that the best arguments for reviewing our funding model were made by Councillor Whitehead at the end of his remarks, where he pointed to the excellence of the RBG and the importance of the RBG for Hamilton, ecologically, aesthetically, and economically. That's why this motion is a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Jackson and Councillor Green.
Madam Deputy Mayor, I'll support this with the understanding there's no obligation in terms of an expectation of what the report or the comments back from staff will be in terms of what the mover and seconder are expecting. If they're expecting with the word sustainable in there, that somewhere along the way the 22% will be looked after or some variation thereof, I'll have a concern and I can't support it. If it is truly wide open and all options be brought back, including the 1% guideline, ultimately as one of the options that we can still support, then I can support the motion. But if going forward with the word sustainable in there, I get concerned and I'm a little nervous and worried that that is going to lead staff to do some machination of the 22% over maybe a year or two and come back with 7 over 3 years, whatever the case might be. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Green, Councillor Aidan Johnson, Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. And for that reason as well, I take issue with the idea that this needs to be more sustainable funding. I would argue that $600,000 a year is sustainable funding, that this service is at an excellence threshold in terms of what they offer, and that the 22% ask for equalization with Halton is unnecessary and a little bit premature in terms of where we are with our budget talks. So I cannot support this. I think that as is, they offer a great service, and there is no sacrifice in staying in at the 1%. I have not heard through their presentation what we'd be losing if we didn't do this. There's certainly no threat of them closing. There's no threat of a reduced service. And with their increased in fees per user, given the numbers that they've had, they should have an adequate new cash influx with their strategic plan. So, and I do think that $600,000 a year is sustainable funding, adequate to the excellent service that they provide.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to Councillor Whitehead as first time on the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have concerns and reservations with the motion, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. I don't agree with a number of formulas, and I talked about the Grand River earlier, and we could literally take the same motion and apply it to almost every organization that we feel that the formula is inadequate in regards to the impact on the taxpayers of this community. We're selecting one. Okay, so let's deal with the budget process. Usually organizations come in here and demonstrate the need for the additional dollars. What we have here is not a demonstration of need. What we have here is a demonstration of, we want you to match Burlington. To me, if that's what is driving this motion, and it's not driven by a business case, then why are we even entertaining it? We didn't get a breakdown of the hotel nights, for example, that is driven, or all those other business cases or challenges or red flags to justify the significant increase. We just got, we want you to match Halton. Now, if that's what my colleagues want to do in regards to moving forward and dealing with business, is all you have to say is, we got a great operation, which they do. We think we can do better. We want you to match other communities in your funding, and that is the way you justify that expense without building the business case and providing and demonstrating how those dollars will be used. I would say that we shouldn't be sitting here then. In fact, we're in the wrong business, and other candidates and councils should be here. We shouldn't be making decisions based on no information. And if they came forward and made a business case for that additional money, then I wouldn't be making this argument. So I think it's premature to be even entertaining any discussions until a business case is derived to determine how those additional dollars are being spent. Does that mean then, for example, that Burlington would come down and Hamilton would stay? Or does it mean that Hamilton would go up and I don't even know what the impacts are. Does it mean that we're going to have discussions on the governance issue? Because if you're going to try and match both groups up, clearly the amount of money that Halton is currently giving is represented through the representation and governance they have on the current board. That's not even mentioned in the motion. It's talking about financial. It's not talking about governance. So for those reasons, I think it's irresponsible for anyone to sit here and move forward until they demonstrate, which most organizations need to do in front of us, how those dollars are going to enhance the operation of the RBG. I'm sure they can do.
Particularly to Councillor Whitehead, I agree absolutely with Councillor Whitehead that any change to
the equity situation, but fully understanding that it asked for some hotel accommodation issues have been asked for, some assessment issues have been asked for. So let's see all of that and see where it ends up and have that staff bring that back to us. I think that's fair and reasonable, and I wouldn't expect anything less from this council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You did call the question. I do have 3 more speakers, though. Hang on. I understand that, but hopefully the information's gone around the table. There's been a lot of discussion here, great discussion. So if we can kind of rein it in now that we can get to the motion. I have Councillor Green, Councillor Johnson, Aiden.
Deputy Mayor to staff, budget year 2016, external agencies funded under boards and agencies, preliminary budget talks with staff. Who's the point person? Is it finance? Is it related to departments?
So through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, in September of 2015, we came forward with a guideline to Council with a guideline request for the 2016 budget deliberations. Council provided that guideline request, and city staff, corporate services staff, sent out a correspondence through clerks to the various boards and agencies advising the boards and agencies of the guideline request, and that would have taken place, I suspect, in October of 2015. As it relates to RBG, we did receive a correspondence in November that was preliminary prior to the board approval, and then a subsequent correspondence on December 20th, and you have staff's response to that December 20th correspondence. It's agenda item 4.1 in your agenda today. So in terms of the communication, it's through clerks and corporate services.
And just for the purpose, I think maybe perhaps the one thing that hadn't been discussed in our round of questioning, what is the rationale between the 1% increase to all boards and agencies?
So through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, when we came forward in September with our budget guideline, we asked specifically to city departments, boards and agencies, and user fees. So again, as it relates to boards and agencies, there is a clear direction from Council of a 1% guideline.
And so, given where we're at now, what precedent does this set now moving forward? If this is going to be the expectation of Council, that every time we ask for one, they come back, whether it's 5% or 22%, is the expectation now then, Madam Deputy Mayor, through you to staff, that we will meet with all of these different groups to find rationales and to find compelling reasons why there's a need, when perhaps in the presentation, which is what I thought we would be receiving today, that need would have already been articulated, and with all due respect to previous comments, that we are all working in good faith here. I don't think that there's anybody not working and having this conversation in good faith. But why was that not brought forward with the 22%? You can't answer that to staff, but my question is, if the precedent is set now, do we have the time, resources, and abilities to accommodate every single board and agency that we've mandated 1% to try to work something out, quote unquote, from?
So through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, the part of that question I can respond to is the timing. And so as it relates to the request, I appreciate the request is in terms of their 2016 budget, if the staff, and to review the need as well as the potential benefit accruing to the parties, and to review the funding model. I would suggest that the next month will not give us through that deliberation. It would likely be something we would come back in for the 2017 budget process for. So again, just in terms of the budget process, again, I'll just remind committee, our current budget schedule assumes a March budget approval date. And so if the expectation is that the various parties sit down to review the business plans for RBG as well as the funding model, it would require more than the next 4 weeks.
And that was kind of what dawned on me while we were sitting here talking about these talks. We're in here 2 or 3 times a week in GIC talking about budgets. What's the precedent? I know that we set the precedent now, the expectation for all agencies, all with great services, great amenities and accommodations to our community, that we go back and we work with them to find the money. And I'm just not clear in my very short time on council, and certainly I can't support it still.
Thank you. Councillor Aidan Johnson.
Thank you very much. Madam Deputy Mayor, I would just like to refer quickly and briefly to an important point that Mark made in his presentation, referring to the unusual situation RBG finds itself in as a non-conservation authority doing conservation authority work. Part of why the RBG is in this unique bind is that it doesn't have the same legal rights as the conservation authorities to extract money from the municipalities that touch upon it. So RBG, I mean, a tiny bit of history, RBG was set up in the 30s before we had conservation authorities in Ontario. The RBG Act predates the Conservation Authorities Act, and that puts the RBG in a strange situation. I agree, so I fully agree that we need to have a contract as a provincial statute. That's not going to happen to short and medium term. In response to concerns that have been addressed around this table over the past few minutes, and specifically about whether this word sustainable in my motion might accidentally lead staff into necessarily supporting a 50-50 model, when that isn't the intention of the motion, I would like to, Madam Deputy Mayor, propose to my motion, simply by removing the words for more sustainable funding from the motion. And if I may, I'll read out what the motion would be without those words in it. So here's the modified motion I would propose. That staff be directed to work with RBG and will surely not be.
And then sustainability came into it, and I backed off as Councillor Jackson did.
RBG wouldn't be complete within the 26 budget process. I think I thought now you're saying to move this discussion towards the 2017 budget process. Could I do that to the chair? Just for clarification.
I clearly heard Mr. that the next 4 weeks will not be enough to come up with meaningful, well-informed proposals on this topic. And that's straightforward and clear. I mean, I have a question right now as to whether the best thing is to withdraw the motion and simply do a direction for staff for conversation with the RBG that I want. So
now he's gone.
An idea, and I'm prepared to go ahead with my idea, and I'll look for feedback.
And give the floor away. So we have made some very difficult decisions to date. Large sums of dollars, whether it's Notre Dame or the business, making the business case to staff without making it to.
Councillor Partridge, hopefully last.
And the enhancements, if I understand correctly, through you to Mike, are going to represent another full residence and letting them know it's going to be a 3.1%. I can't sell that to them, and so I'm not interested in that. But Mike, can you just confirm that, please, with all the enhancements and with some additional asks that we would have for the 2016? How far out of whack are we with our taxes?
So through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, our presentation last week identified, I believe, 18 referred items, and I believe since that time it's grown by additional 2. So again, last week, approximately approximately $7 million net in pressures if all of those referred items were to be approved, and that would represent an additional residential tax impact of 1% over and above the 2.1 that we've reflected as a preliminary residential tax impact.
Okay, thank you very much. And Madam Chair, even hearing that our enhancements have now grown by 2, we're definitely headed in the wrong direction here, folks. So that would be my humble suggestion, is just to provide direction to staff. I do believe that conversation needs to take place. I'm very supportive, absolutely supportive of the RBG. We need to have that conversation, but to include it in the 2016 budget process, I'm not on for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Aidan Johnson, I'm going to come back to you now on whether or not the motion's on the floor.
So here it is, Madam Deputy Mayor. Having heard all of what we've heard, I am comfortable removing my motion from consideration and asking, or rather directing staff to engage in conversations with the RBG. And I would like to add, I'm extremely grateful to everybody for this conversation today. I thought it was a really good conversation. Staff to hear that conversation and for
I'll ask the clerk that we recognize that motion's withdrawn.
Something seems to be missing for me in that space, because if we're not going to, if we're going to vote on motions, then the motions go forward. If we're just...
Go ahead.
A point of order. The fact is,
she was being sarcastic.
We have to vote on it.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. So the motion has been moved and seconded, is on the floor. Although Councillor Aidan Johnson has requested its removal and the seconder does not seem to be concerned about that, it still now belongs to the committee, so they can vote on whether or not that motion should be withdrawn or put forward.
Fine. In order to keep the process, I will ask then, all in favor of removal of the motion that's on the floor? Carried. Opposed? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, you'll so record that. Thank you, everyone. And on the direction now, Councillor Johnson has given direction.
I'm going to...
No more. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We will now move on. We did receive the Director of Human Resources.
Things we did last year, and then we will quickly move on to the budget presentation, and in the understanding of time, we'll try to keep it right on point. Thank you. Our CAO couldn't make it today. He's on bereavement leave, so that's why he's left it to us to take care of. And it's also one of these, we're in an odd position where we are 99.65% in the Hamilton, city of Hamilton. So we don't have a lot of issues that our friends in the other authorities do have. That and a lot of the faces sitting around the table are also ones that we've gone through the budget in quite a detailed exercise. So not only am I a resource, but your colleagues are also a resource.
Again, thank you. As Neil indicated, I am Neil McDougall, our Secretary Treasurer. We also have staff member Scott Peck, our Director of Watershed Planning and Engineering Services, today in the audience. I'm pleased to be able just to provide some opening remarks and an introduction slideshow today on behalf of our CAO, Christopher Thiegland, who Neil indicated is off on bereavement leave for his mother. Our thoughts are with him and his family. My message today is really to thank you for all of your past support. I believe you're aware that we are meeting the 1% levy guideline that the all organizations are grappling with inflationary increases and cost pressures, and we're thankful the city was able to provide an increase in the levy this year to all the boards and agencies. However, to adapt to the reality that levy doesn't cover all of our funding needs, we at HCA have continued to focus
Thank you.
on the city and our residents. Goals. Our first stop is going to be at Westfield Heritage Village. Thanks to the city for helping us acquire some additional. So with these additional lands, about 100 acres, we're really able to expand Westfield into a full conservation authority. We're going to be able to build on its future. We're going to be able to offer significant outdoor experiences and walking trails. It's a big community building experience for Westfield, and it's going to be able to provide it with the opportunity to provide better for its own financial future by managing the land to help pay for its operating costs. It's not merely just going to be a pioneer village. Moving on to a little bit east in our watershed to Millgrove. Millgrove, this is an example I'm going to go over of a reciprocal lease arrangement that we undertook with the City of Hamilton. If you might recall that we leased to the city area for a dog park, the city gave to HCA, or leased to HCA, one of their unused works yards. I just have a picture of this. Now, this took place a little over a year ago, but it's only now that you really can see the full refurbishment that we've undertaken of the area. So you can see the before and after shot here. You can see we've done to improve the asphalt, painting, stonework. And we've also done some considerable cleanup on the inside, including some extensive remediation. We removed all the asbestos. So our thanks to the city. This has been a great facility for us. We've got all of our heavy equipment out of the Dundas Valley, which was a concern. We've got it in an appropriate facility. You've got a bright spot in Millgrove now, and we were able to help out some of the residents after the windstorm last year, doing some cleanup on their property with some of the trees that were down. This one's been in the newspaper quite a bit over the last little while. So our thanks to the city for the assistance in this project to Reba Destination. I've got some great shots here just to show you the amazing masonry work that the contractor undertook. This was back in the summer, taking the walls down stone by stone, laying it out all numbered and organized like it's a Lego set so they can get it back up in the proper order. Putting up, erecting an internal steel structure to hold it stable. And this picture was just taken in the last 7 or 10 days. We've got the outer walls back up to the full height. We still have some work to do on the outside and some landscaping, but by the summer, it should be fully complete. This area really hasn't been accessible to visitors. It's been fenced off. It was leaning precariously, crumbling. Now it's going to be a finished site and something that we're hoping will be of interest for outdoor weddings. I'm going to move on to some recent examples of 2 dam projects that we have undertaken. The first being at Mineral Springs. This is close to our main office. So this was the Mineral Springs Dam before. I know this doesn't look like perhaps a typical dam structure. This is an earthen dam structure. You actually get to this off of Martins Road. It connects to our trail systems, but this really is a dam. It does control floodwaters. Some work on the existing culvert that you see here. And this is what it looks like today with the restoration. And this provides protection for the hamlet of Mineral Springs, which is downstream. We're going to move on to Crooks Hollow and the restoration work that took place here. Now, this also took place over a year ago, but again, it's only now you can see the full rehabilitation and restoration. So this is actually a non-operating dam. It was was removed. Now, this will be a shot stream, so you can see the restoration of the Spencer Creek and the habitat there. And there's a shot kind of looking back. Thank you to our partner, the City of Hamilton, for helping us do these things. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Neil McDougall to get you into the numbers.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As I mentioned when I first arrived here, we will, or I shall make every effort to move through this at a proper pace. If there's something that you wish to ask at any point in time, I'm very receptive. Our core services, this is something that all conservation authorities are responsible for doing: floodplain management and erosion control. And I think you heard the Grand say how they coordinate with us. And in fact, we're working together, all the conservation areas work together on the floodplain management, erosions, flood warnings, that sort of thing. We also do water monitoring, open space, habitat conservation, environmental awareness and education, recreational opportunities, and then we also host events, primarily out at Christie Lake, where we have a nice show field for larger events like the Harvest Picnic, which occurs in August, and the Christie Antique and Vintage Show, which happens in both May and September. Now, we own, lease, and manage 11,000 acres. We've acquired roughly 400 acres this past year, so I don't have to say approximately 11,000 anymore. It's actually 10,903, so I'm comfortable saying 11,000. We have 7 watersheds, Spencer Creek being the largest, Boris Creek, Shadow Creek, Red Hill Creek, Stony Creek conservation areas. The ones that everyone is familiar with: Falls, Spencer Gorge, which I'll be mentioning later on. For us, we have 31 licensed lightweight vehicles, pickup trucks and vans that move our crews around. We have 6 pieces of heavy equipment. We have some dump trucks and trailers to be able to move our backhoes around to the various areas. We all do this as efficiently as we can. We try to keep any third-party leases as low as we can, and that's how we justify having heavy equipment in-house. We have office locations at our main conservation areas, and we have the one work center, Millgrove, which Lisa explained. Now, 2015, as you've heard from everyone, emerald ash borer is a main concern for us, just like it is for everyone else. We have gone into the Dofasco Trail, which we had to actually close because there was significant risk to walkers if they were to go through this. We went in and actually cleared a swath on either side of the boardwalk to keep things safe and address that issue. We're constantly working at having the ashes that are near to the trails removed, because that's our primary directive, is to keep the trails safe, because we want to keep them open. Now, one of the things that's been mentioned a couple of times is that, Hamilton is growing, and we actually have seen that in our subdivision plan reviews. We had a nice spike this year, which means that those spikes will turn into subdivisions, which will turn into tax dollars, which will mean the 1% will become 4 or 5. I'm not sure, just speculating there. We have an outdoor educational and outdoor environmental education program as well. It's not as big as some of the other folks that you've seen already, but we have one full-time person assisted by a casual person and a contract work, and they cover these 7,000 students over 135 class days. We have been the beneficiary of some granting, which has allowed us to extend free transportation to some of the inner schools to get them out into the bush where they can see for themselves what the wilderness is like. Now that we also have the Westfield Heritage Village solidly under our wing, we include them as one of our divisions. 32,000 visitors last year for special events and Sunday walks, and they're very popular Christmas activities, the Telling Tales in September, which is also very popular. And there too, we have student programs. 8,900 students were treated to the Westfield experience this past year. The next item is one that, again, we tend to repeat ourselves, but it's because these are the important things that we do. And we developed a property acquisition subcommittee, and I believe Councillor Conley is on that, Councillor Collins, and several other board members are on that to help us invest in property so that this is the legacy that we're talking about providing for decades and generations to come. The two largest were in the East Mountain, as Lisa described, which it now gives us the critical mass to actually have something out there we can call a conservation area. Whereas before we did have the Dofasco Trail and we had the Devil's Punch Bowl, but now with this over 100 acres, or 170 acres actually, we now have something that we can build, we can do quite a good revenue for something that's not intrusive to us, and it gives us a nice generation of funds. We have embarked this past year on significant training. We're developing leadership programs. I checked with Lisa, and 40% of our staff are 55 years or older, so there will be turnover, so we're trying to develop the staff that we have in place. We also had new legislation come through as far as working from heights, so we had to address those issues, as well as the regular type of training that you have for your staff to make sure that they're able to do their jobs and do them well. We don't want to put people in a position of failure. We want to put them in a position where they can feel good and accomplish what we expect of them. Now, we've completed organizational restructurings over the past couple of years. We've created development roles that allow internal candidates to grow into positions rather than expecting them to have all the tools before we give them the job. This way, the younger folks that we have in the organization will be able to grow up through the organization and really give us the benefit of their expertise, which they've developed in-house. One thing that was started 3 or 4 years ago, I believe I've talked to you about, is the involvement of the staff, full-time staff, in some of our major maintenance and capital work. So if we're redecking a bridge or we're working on trails, rather than have people in the slow season trying to do busy work, we keep them fully engaged and get them outside and doing these other tasks, which quite frankly they all enjoy. Some of them don't like being stuck behind a desk all the time, and they like to get out there, so that's been working very well. So our revenue sources come from several different places, as all do. 57% self-generated from our admission fees and our camping, our marina, and other activities at the conservation areas. The municipal levies, which now total 4.2 million, represent 37% of our total revenues. In this year coming up, the provincial and federal grants are a bit lower because we, a couple years past, like the dam decommissioning was a large one, the Aramosa. So the revenues are the expenses of 12.3 million are down. The arrangement we have with our conservation areas is we provide the equipment, and then we in the workshop and the equipment area are responsible for doing all the maintenance, doing the fixing, doing everything. So the operations actually are just operating. We handle the management of the equipment, making sure they have the right tools and in good working order. We also have 3 loans, the Veldhouse, the defined benefit pension wrap-up loan, and 50-point Marina Wall loan. Now, the 50-point Marina Wall loan is completed in 2016, so that relief will help us being able to fund further expenses going into 2017. So, you know, we're always looking at what's coming down the next year, and these are some of the things that, you know, sometimes you get a small windfall by finishing up a loan, and then that we can use towards our expenses in the coming year. You know, that block of money, you know, you're talking is it finding in next year I'll be able to put some money on the table because the loan is are recommended. Now 2016 being paid off, or it is completed, so we don't have to pay that anymore. Those types of things are all we consider in the envelope to stay within the guidelines right there, so that we're not a leader or a follower, we're just right in the middle. 2015 was an excellent year, and it was not a year that we 5%, because we don't believe that we can have as great a summer again as we did this year. If we do, tremendous. But you don't want to set yourself up for failure by expecting that you're going to have another great year. Again, Confederation Park, we went from 88,000 visitors to 130,000 visitors. I assure you, the budget for Confederation Park, when you see it through Public Works, is not predicated on 130,000 plus for 2016. We're looking at expanding our camping sites up at Valence. We're looking at putting in some pull-through campsites. So the people who have the bigger trailers that you see on the QEW, they're not so good at backing in and moving around, so we set up camping sites where they pull in, and then there's a road on the other side, so when they're done, they pull out. So it's very good for that sector of the camping world. We're also entering into the cabin rental business. For the first time, we're going to have fixed wall buildings also up at Valence Lake, and we're looking at that as being a new revenue source. Now, as I mentioned, expenditure more than half staff related, so we keep our emphasis on the core, and we supplement with contract and seasonal workers as we need. The full-time complement down 3, I mentioned that. It was down 2 last year when I came here, so we're really tightening it up, and I think we're at a point now where we are able to accomplish what's necessary without straining the staff or not delivering the service. But I think it's fair to say we're pretty much there. So that's not going to be a source of new money in the coming years. This past year, we said that the combination of the cost of living and merit increases would be capped at 3%. So we had done an exercise, I guess it would be 4 years back, where we went and did the whole evaluation of jobs and payment and set ourselves at being at the 50 percentile. So as in the comparators, there's as many people above us as there is below us. And that was a good one-time thing to do. But if the bands move more than 3%, then in 10 years or so we might find ourselves in the position where again we're on the wrong side of that 50 percentile, and we'll have to address it. Other expectations, we expect electricity and gas to continue to increase, and right now we're enjoying the benefit of a low gas price. So that takes us into the levy use. The way we apportion the levy is we treat the conservation areas, as I mentioned, sort of at a variable cost, so they are responsible collectively to cover off all their costs. And I say collectively because we make some money in 50 Point at the marina and Valence at the camping, but then we have passive areas which don't have revenue to support the cost to clean the garbage, groom the trails, make sure that everything's good, make sure that hazard trees are removed, that type of thing. So on a net basis, conservation areas do contribute to the betterment of the whole. Watershed planning, between the money that the provincial government gives us, which isn't very much, the Section 39 money goes, it's a taker of the levy. Westfield Heritage Village, it's for a museum, it's good. It does provide 1/3 of its costs through admission rates and school programs, and 2/3 come from levy. And then the central support, which is all the administrative and non-revenue generating services that are done centrally, and then apportion the levy that way. But this is our belief that it's a better way to manage the conservation areas, because then the individual managers know what they're responsible for and they're able to stay on top of that. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, 99.65% comes from the city, which means there is a portion that comes from the township of Plushlant. Their portion of 0.35% will cost them actually $12,775 this year, up from the $12,000 last year. But that's as far as we get with the allocation on this end. Now, priorities in 2016. The one we're really excited about is this East Mountain Conservation Authority and conservation area. And we're commissioning a feasibility study. We're going to, after we get those results, then we'll have an idea of what we can do about water retention, what we can do about wetland restoration, and what we can do about setting up a wildlife stoning up our battlefield creeks. So we're really excited about getting that moving. We also, on that point, we did receive some funding from the Green Municipal Fund with the help of the city, who signed off a letter supporting our efforts, and that was very nice. We also have additional lands that we're looking for in the East End. When we went forward with this idea of developing a bigger East Mountain presence, because we were underrepresented out there, we received some money from the Heritage Green Trust and also from the city, all related to the tipping fees. So it's a reinvestment back in the East End, and with the acquisition committee, we will be looking at finding other pieces of property that border along the streams that we can use, expand our presence there, always on a willing buyer, willing seller basis. Now, the next item is something that it's a interesting case, because we're spoiled by our own success, or rather we're hurt by our own success, because it comes to the Spencer Gorge and Webster's Falls and Tews Falls. Now we are getting recognized as being the greatest waterfall, with the exception of Niagara. All due respect to Niagara, my colleagues from Niagara. But a lot of people who are coming don't make it all. Now we have issues there. We have issues about parking in the community. We have issues about safety. Safety in two different prongs, really. We have the one safety where the stairs that go down to the observation deck are drastically in need of repair, and we have to do something with them. So we close them. People don't understand what closed mean. They will crawl under our barriers, over our barriers, around our barriers, and on any regular day in the summer, you'll see people tracing up and down, and our people will try to get them off, but it's like herding cats. You can get a couple to go away, and then there's other ones coming in behind you. Secondly, around these falls, there seems to be a new fad of taking selfies in dangerous locations, and we have people, and we've seen them on Facebook, that will sneak out, sit on the very edge of the falls, and hold up their cameras, take their selfies, and publish it on Facebook. Well, one little slip on a wet rock, and they're done. It's a large waterfall. So we need to address all those things, and that's one of the issues that we're undertaking, and we're working in collaboration with the community on this, and I believe our first meeting to that end is coming up in early February. March. Sorry, I misspoke. Early March. Now, one of the other things that we're looking at doing is growing the Christie Lake. It used to be the Christie Lake Antique Show. It turns out all the antiquers, both the vendors and the purchasers, they're retiring, sadly passing away, some of them. So we're expanding this to be antique and vintage show. So now there'll be 1970s memorabilia, the avocado green fridges, and the nothing is wrong with those. And there's a yellow that I can't remember whether it's gold some gold color too that was very prevalent back then. So we're expanding that. We did it for the first time in May, and we received 10,000 visitors came in, and they seem to really enjoy it. We're getting new vendors because now we're allowing them to come in as well. And it seems to be working. So we'll be pushing the vintage part of the antique and vintage for both the spring and fall show this year. We've had an official name change, and so we're excited about doing that. The Emerald Ash bullet for this, so we are just continually monitoring our trails and trying to keep everything safe. So, and then the last thing is sort of the priority, but it's business as usual. Infrastructure. We're focusing on our existing sites and looking to add where we can. We're trying to improve our trails to give a better experience, and we're increasing signage to help people stay on the trails, not wander off and fall off the escarpment or into poison ivy or any such thing, and which unfortunately does happen on a fairly regular basis. So, we're doing as much as we can to keep everything moving. All within the envelope, which we understand to be fair because we are part of this, we are 99.65% Hamiltonians, best place in the world. So we understand and respect, and together we do make a difference. Madam Chair, I'll receive questions, if any.
Thank you very, very much, Neil. Excellent presentation, terrific slides. And I will go to my speakers list. Councillor Brenda Johnson, Councillor Lloyd Ferguson, and Councillor Partridge first.
Yep, thank you very much. And I know my colleagues have got a variety of questions to ask you, but I've just got two, actually. One for Neil and one for Lisa. Neil, Christopher Thaglin stood here last year, and when asked about the current funding formula, the response was and still is, are you in agreement with it? Are you okay with the current formula?
The formula that was in place for the last 10, 15 years, which came about after the amalgamation, is certainly a formula that we're sort of passive on that from the standpoint of it doesn't really affect our relationship between Hamilton and Pushland. Certainly, we think it's fair. First, let me say that. It is fair in our perspective.
Thank you.
I can leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. And Neil, although you did say something about the barriers at the various falls that you're dealing with, I just wanted to ask Lisa a question because she brought up the Westfield Village. And I remember being on the CAB committee, and one of the issues was ATV use and barriers, that they were literally wrapping chains around them and pulling them away so that they can get into wherever they needed to get into. And Westfield Village was really becoming a victim at that point. Conservation Authority still spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every year trying to deter and repair ATV damage. So do you have any comments for that? Is it improved somewhat? Is it getting the same? Or is it worse?
My understanding is we've made some progress in that regard. I don't believe we've got the same level of damage and intervention required in Westfield, but it is working on secure enough that can't be pulled down or twisted. Has been working with the Hamilton Police on that further.
Yeah, thank you very much. Those two questions, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
I know it's not easy. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And Neil, Lisa, good presentation. And has been done to that building.
Pretty tough, but you're pretty good today and presented well. And Neil, thank you. And Scott, thank you for being here. I've seen the Hamilton Conservation change dramatically since I've come to the City Council back in 2006. The Board of Directors, some have changed, some are still there. A great working group. Christopher, he's not here. And passing what's happening, property acquisitions, mill growth. So we managed to get that mill growth for parts while they're doing another one. There's room in the shed, and it's just a good thing to be there and see the happiness and the work efficiencies there. Last year, back on August the 2nd, we had a I was out there on a Sunday morning, and I said, the building there was a salt dome at the back of the reporter and staff that the building was like exploded, it just wasn't blown.
A good stewardship of that property.
Something that's in need for the conservation. So I don't know if you want me to leave till later while I'm talking, because Mike is here, and maybe Neil or Lisa could comment on that. Okay. Yard, which is just outside the line in Councillor Partridge's ward, but we worked through that. It was an old storage.
Just under the deduction, some sea containers to keep the goods in, because we do need something there. But if we could put in some sort of a more rectangular, it would be far more efficient. We have had cost estimates to do this for, and so that's what as sort of a special dispensation, because it is hopefully a.
Thank you, Councillor. You want me to turn to Mr. Zagier for
Deputy Mayor, committee members may fall through the capital budget deliberation. So staff could come back by debt as a potential funding source. But again, the $200,000